Hi, I'm Marcus Allen. Nexus magazine, the world's leading alternative news magazine. And there are two types of people in the world, those who read Nexus and those who are about to. Let's go.
Thank you, Marcus, for that lovely introduction. Hello, everybody. You're joining the Paranormal Peep Show meets Unite Planet Christmas Special 2020. Hello, everyone. How is everyone?
Oh, well.
Hey, Neil, how you doing?
Oh, Josh. Oh, my goodness. Who's that ho-ho-hoing? It's not me.
Santa.
It looks like Santa there. Has Santa come on to this?
It's a very straightforward-looking stiff Santa. He's not even moving. He's obviously had a bit too much of the old,
I'm meditating.
Rudolph's rum or something.
I'm meditating, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, he's
Listeners to
meditating.
the Paranormal Peep Show, viewers to Unite Planet. I just wanted to wish everyone a very, very Merry Christmas.
Have you even said that without moving your lips?
I actually thought it was James Randi there.
That was the last show.
It's the mystical magician who's obviously returned from the afterlife to wish us a Merry Christmas.
As Santa. Wow.
I'm sure he will at some point. Yes, he will.
Ho, ho, ho.
It's actually me.
Oh, hang on there.
I think James Randi would be saying no, no, no.
No. Yeah, that's a torture.
Oh, hello, everyone. It's me.
Well, it's Ben. How are you, Ben?
I'm all right, thanks. Thanks for inviting me onto the show, guys. I wish a happy Christmas to everybody, and it's great to be here. It's great to have Christmas again, and even though there's a lockdown, we're all stuck in our own little ways, but it won't stop us celebrating. We're still going to have fun.
And as part of those celebrations, I went out using the big budget of Paranormal UK Radio Network to buy us some mince pies. We need them back for next year, so don't scoff them all at once. So help yourself, everybody.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, right. Lovely.
Thank you.
I dropped it.
Mine's actually in the teleporter that I've got here, so it's flashing away. I'll just go and get it. Hold on.
Okay, I wonder what that strange noise was.
Damn it. I dropped mine. That's bad luck, but I'll have to have some later. But thanks anyway, Neil.
Okay, well, I'm going to enjoy mine. I'd imagine coming through a teleporter, it might have microwaved the heat up a little bit, and it's probably it needs a bit of cream to go with that. How's it come through, Andy, through your teleporter?
It was a mince pie you sent, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely a mince pie.
Only my end, it's come as a little cherry bakewell tart.
It's transgendered slightly. It's got an extra bit now. Well, we won't have to mention it. The politically correct might jump down on us. So
it could be a Mandela effect. This could actually be a mince pie, how I remember it.
I think we're going to have to call these next year mincing pies.
Matt Lucas on the Great British Bake Off. That's how he appeared.
Who's that? Sorry,
Matt Lucas on the Great British Bake Off.
Oh yeah,
one of the presenters, and he painted his head red and came as a bakewell tart, which Andy is now eating.
So Andy's eating Matt Lucas. Wow,
I am.
But don't get mixed up.
He doesn't know about it yet,
so
but
don't come and eat me, because people tell me I look like.
No, you don't.
George Dawes. Ben, you look nothing like George Dawes. Out of interest, what are the scores so far?
Of what? Sorry, Andy.
You don't look like George Dawes at all. What are the scores so far?
Oh, right. I don't get that. Sorry, I don't watch enough TV.
Shooting Stars, I remember that.
Shooting Stars?
Yeah.
No.
No, I'm not familiar with that
Ben,
either.
you're going to have to watch it. Your homework will be to go and watch Shooting Stars.
Right.
It's got late 90s, but
I will have to do that at some point. Yes, Andy, I will.
it was before when comedy died, but when it became politically correct and just kind of died a death.
It has. I tend to avoid comedy these days because it's just not funny. That's the problem.
I'll tell you what.
If it's ever put on DVD, they sell it at Reggie Perrin's Grot Shop. I don't know if anyone's old enough to get that one.
I came across an article, a newspaper article, saying that 75% of the BBC's comedians are left-leaning or outright leftists. That's actually quite a low number. I thought it was about 99%.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, I mean, anyone who's not with the program, tends to get kicked out these days. Names.
You get given a book of Karl Marx, and it's like, do you approve of this? Yes, you're in. No, you're out.
It's very sad. It really is that they've gone that far left.
Do you know what else they've done, Marcus? I don't know if you're a fan of League of Gentlemen, Papa Lazarou and Tubbs and all that thing. League of Gentlemen was, for anyone who doesn't know, it was a really, really dark, twisted, but extremely funny comedy, late 90s, early 2000s. There is now, I think it's on Netflix, but it might be on other streaming services, a disclaimer that they put up saying, this is a comedy that people found funny of its age or something like that. It was found funny. It may contain offensive language and controversial topics. And I'm just thinking, this is League of Gentlemen.
Before they stop showing Carry On films, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, surely comedy is meant to be offensive in some way.
Yeah, it's really supposed to push boundaries, but apparently it's not to some people's taste now.
Yeah, they used to, before they stopped showing the Carry On films and things at Christmas, they actually did show them, but they put like content warnings before them saying this film is so many years old, and what some viewers may be offended by some of the rather antiquated ideas about sex, gender, and race and things like that. But of course, it's been exposed now. I mean, all this sort of cultural Marxism, I think, is being exposed before it's had the chance to become completely hegemonic, which is good news, because when people can see it essentially loses its power, because it depends on secrecy and not being perceived.
Yeah.
The thing is, how many people really take it on board? I'll tell you why, because on YouTube and Facebook, etc., whenever there's kind of like mainstream things being pushed out of a cultural Marxist agenda, I don't know if you guys check the comments, but almost all of the comments completely slate it. Even BBC News is about 50-50. So you'll be some people that are completely on board, but a hell of a lot of the comments are completely slating whatever this mainstream thing is that they're putting out. So I'm wondering if they are trying to put forward the notion that cultural Marxism is actually more popular than it really deeply is with people.
Oh, of course. I mean, they of course. I mean,
I even saw it with Porridge. I mean, Porridge had that disclaimer on as well, saying, saying it's of its age and the jokes are, a little bit dated. Even Porridge, it's crazy.
There's nothing offensive about Porridge. No. I'm sorry, there's nothing offensive.
They even said naff off, which is a word they made up because they couldn't say the F word. And so the word naff off was made up to kind of substitute it. And that was in the mid-70s, So they were trying to be correct then, oddly enough, Anyway, Marcus, you are our resident expert on all things space, if I can sort of say that, and that's space from the past and also space of the present. So you've got a great interest in the Apollo moon landings because you believe they're partly hoaxed or completely hoaxed, and also there's the Artemis program, which is the replacement, the successor to the Apollo moon landings. Can you explain a little bit all about that for our listeners that are not familiar with all this?
Okay. You can probably tell that I'm old enough to have been around when the alleged Apollo landings actually happened, or were told they happened. 1969, the first one. Apollo 11, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins landed on the moon. And we all watched it live on television, didn't we? Well, I did. 3:30 in the morning it was, and I was very impressed. And I thought, what a wonderful thing to have done. They got to the moon. And then over the next sort of 20 years, I believed it. I thought, this is for real. This must be something that we can all celebrate. And what a wonderful place America must be to have achieved it. And what leadership they must have to have engendered such complete activity. And then about 30 years ago, started to question. Now, that was around the time that the internet started to become a thing. And you could go onto the internet and you could look at things that you wanted to find out about. And it was much easier than going down to the library and looking in books. And I discovered that not only was it completely faked, but that people still believed that it was real. It's a very strange sensation when you get, and you can demonstrate scientifically that it was faked, because it's not possible for humans to reach the moon. Now, there's a difference between humans reaching the moon and unmanned satellites reaching the moon. They can do it quite easily because those satellites can be, or spacecraft can be, the technical term is hardened against the radiation. Oh, radiation. There's a problem in space with radiation, is there? I didn't know that, many people will say. They may have heard of the Van Allen radiation belts, named after Professor James Van Allen of Iowa University, to give him his full title. And he just confirmed that they existed by the simple expedient of putting a Geiger counter on top of one of the very first American rockets to be launched, Explorer 1. And they were surprised when this Geiger counter stopped reading. It just stopped. End of story. And they looked at the data and they found that the Geiger counter had been overwhelmed by the radiation levels in space. Whoops, they said, we'll put another Geiger counter on the next one. Well, that didn't work, so they put one on Explorer 4, and they got up and confirmed that there were 2 belts of radiation surrounding the Earth, which is quite natural. It's a completely natural phenomenon, and it protects us from the radiation generated by the sun, and also galactic cosmic rays from deep space. So what you've got there is a major anomaly. These alleged astronauts, well, they're not alleged astronauts, they allegedly went beyond this Van Allen radiation belt, but they're the only people who've ever done it. No other human has been more than about 250 or 300 miles up into space, which is where the International Space Station is. So what you've got is this anomaly in the scientific evidence, which now has been more or less confirmed that space, as was said back in the 1950s, is radioactive. Not a good place for humans. But there's another thing about space. It's a vacuum, a complete vacuum. In fact, the further away from Earth you go, the harder the vacuum becomes, because there's just nothing there. That is what a vacuum is about. There's nothing there. There's nothing in space to have any validity. So what you've got is a complete vacuum. Now, one of the things that vacuums do, there are 2 things vacuums do. One is to outgas any liquids, which means that you can put water into a vacuum chamber and lower the vacuum, and it will boil at about 20 or 30 degrees centigrade. Normally on Earth, water boils at 100 degrees centigrade. The lower the harder the vacuum, the lower the temperature at which liquids boil. Now, the other thing is called cold welding, where metals in contact with each other in space will literally weld themselves together because the metals outgas. And the atoms, which are outgassed, intermingle and in effect weld together. So we're told that there were photographs taken of astronauts on the lunar surface, and we've seen them, because that is the main evidence that people put forward to say, well, it must have happened. Look, we've got all these wonderful photographs. But if photographic film is outgassed in a vacuum, which it is, and it's been demonstrated to be outgassed, I have a colleague in Canada who's done the experimentation using a vacuum chamber, which doesn't produce anything near the level of vacuum that we get on the moon. And photographic film is completely shot. The color balance in the film is wrecked. The film itself will start to get so brittle it won't go through a camera. So how were these photographs taken? They weren't taken on the moon, but any one other place they could have been taken, here on Earth, which is where they were.
Can I quickly jump into with the color balance thing?
Yes.
Are you still there?
Yeah, sure. Go on.
Okay. Recently, there's been the Chinese have successfully landed a I don't know what they call it, Chang'e 5 or something like that on the moon.
Yeah, Chang'e.
And it was the Chang'e, was it?
Yes.
And their color photos of the moon show the moon's surface to be very brown and very beige in color, whereas the NASA photographs, the color ones that they have, it looks more gray in color. Do you think it's either modern technology that is more color realistic, or do you think that, dare I say it, the NASA footage is grey because that's their set?
Well, a very interesting point there, because it allows me to introduce the difference between photographic film and digital. Chang'e 5, the Chinese mission, and most modern missions going anywhere into space use digital equipment, digital cameras, digital video. And digital is not affected in the same way. It can be affected because the CCD chips can be affected, but the Chang'e mission photographs may well be correct in the color. Now, when the Apollo missions were sent, there'd been a previous unmanned satellite called the Surveyor craft and the Lunar Orbiter. Not to be confused with the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, that comes much later. The Lunar Orbiter was sent to the moon to photograph potential landing sites for Apollo. That was quite genuine, quite real, which it did. And most of the photographs were taken in black and white. And you can see these photographs, they exist, there are plenty of them around. So it may well have been that in order to create the simulation for the Apollo missions, which there was a lot of simulation being done, they used these photographs, the Lunar Orbiter mission photographs, which were in black and white, so they didn't have any color to go by. They had no reference to color. So they made it sort of grey and rather boring. Now, because we've now seen photographs of the moon in colour, we're told, those photographs may well be digital, and digital will record it depending on how you want it. You can record digital quite easily. But photographic film does not record in a vacuum. It has to be pressurized. And there are very good historical reasons why I'm quite definite when I say that, because there were two satellites or two craft used photographic film in space. One was the Keyhole satellites, KH-9, launched in 1971. That used photographic film. And the other one was the Lunar Orbiter, and that used photographic film in space around the moon. So how did they get over the problem of photographic film not working in a vacuum? It was pressurized. It was in a completely separate container within the spacecraft that was pressurized to about 1 pound per square inch, but enough pressure to ensure the integrity of the film. Same with the Keyhole satellite. They were pressurized. How do we know this? Because the designer of the camera on the Keyhole satellite said exactly that. The film had to be kept under a degree of pressure to ensure its integrity. I attended the lecture in which he said it. If anybody can dispute that or claim that I'm incorrect, I want to hear about it. I'd love to hear about it, because I don't think I am. I think I'm correct. And extrapolating on from that would imply that no human has landed on the lunar surface. And no photograph has been taken on the lunar surface, because no digital cameras were available during Apollo. They were all photographic film. And if anybody is familiar with photographic film, you'll know that it's a very good medium to record information if you've got it right. But if you're in a vacuum, it's not going to record it. Digital will record it, and this is the difference. Digital cameras will record it in a vacuum because they don't work the same way. But Apollo was all to do with photographic film. So it was all complete nonsense. It was a complete fraud. It was a complete fake. And we can go into the reasons why it was and all the rest of it, if there's time and if anybody's interested. But it was all to do with politics. It was all to do with the Cold War. It was all to do with America has to be seen to beat the Soviet Union. Remember the Soviet Union? Doesn't exist anymore, does it? It's gone. The way of so many things have just disappeared into the ether. So what you've got is the Chinese now doing it. You think, well, the Chinese must know that Apollo was a fake. The Chinese do know that Apollo was a fake. The European Space Agency know it was a fake. The Indians know it was a fake. The Japanese know it was a fake. But it's in their interest to maintain the fiction that it was real, because then they can utilize many of the installations that NASA have available for deep space tracking. So they're being reasonable about it. They're just going ahead. The Chang'e missions are particularly impressive because the Chinese have done something which not many people have been able to do. Interestingly, the Indians attempted it, and they got within a few kilometers of the surface of the moon with their unmanned craft, and then it crashed. The Israelis had much the same result. They were very hopeful it was going to land. And my conclusion about this is that on both those crafts, the Japanese and the Indians and the Israeli craft, they used 3D printed components on part of the craft. On the Indian one, the components were support of the engine, the landing engine, the rocket engine. Now, if they haven't tested those components in the level of vacuum that would be met on the lunar surface, those components may well have failed because they outgassed and so weakened themselves, and they didn't do the job they were designed to do. I was interviewed on Israeli television at the time that this was happening, and I suggested this as a possible solution to the reason why the Israeli craft didn't get onto the lunar surface. And they said, we hadn't thought of that. So these things can happen. So looking at the fact, that is the key point of the whole space mission. You've got to take into account the level of vacuum. Now, vacuum is measured in something called TOR, T-O-R-R, named after Evangelisco Torricelli, who was an Italian scientist who developed the barometer at the end of the 18th century. So TOR is a measure of vacuum. On Earth, we have, at sea level, it's 760 TOR. At the International Space Station, it's TOR 10 to the minus 3. At the Moon, it's TOR 10 to the minus 12. Very, very low indeed. It's a logarithmic scale that is used. And if you understand a logarithmic scale, it doesn't sound as though there's a big difference between minus 3 and minus 12. Oh, yes, there is. It's degrees of difference of about 1 million. So vacuum levels in space, and specifically around the Moon, it's all to do with the fact that there are particles of Earth's atmosphere which manage to get themselves into space because gravity is not enough to pull them back, and they drift off. But the further away you go, the less of them there are. Therefore, the higher the level of vacuum. And vacuum is a very, very powerful force. If it's not being taken into account, spacecraft are going to crash. So the Apollo missions of the 1960s and 70s have now become the Artemis mission of 2018, 19, 20, so on. Artemis was Apollo's twin sister. So guess what? Women on the moon. The problem here, they haven't got a spacesuit for them yet, and they haven't got a rocket to launch. They haven't got a lander to get down onto the surface. So NASA have got a bit of work cut out to get themselves onto the lunar surface by 2024, which is not going to happen because they won't be able to get there. We saw the SpaceX super duper Starliner crashed about a week ago. I think it was less than a week ago. It was launched successfully. It got up to about 12 kilometers successfully. It's where it's meant to get. And then it was supposed to drift back down to Earth, float back down to Earth on its wings. And then the engines were supposed to reignite, and it was meant to land back on Earth. But only 2 of the 3 engines ignited, and it crashed. Oh, dear. But to be fair to SpaceX, they did say that it was majorly successful. They got all the information they wanted. It's just a pity that engine didn't ignite. And a good thing there were no humans on board as well, because otherwise they would be pancaked. So
have they got this gateway thing they're planning? I mean, that's this big difference, isn't it? With the Apollo thing, they just went straight to the moon in their Apollo capsule with the lander. And
Yep.
This time they're going to have like a space station going around the moon. I mean, none of that's been built, I presume.
None of it's been built. None of it's been... I haven't even seen any designs for it. Maybe there are designs for it. It's called Lunar Gateway. They will have an orbiting space station similar to the International Space Station orbits the Earth. This will orbit the moon. And our lucky astronauts will go up to the gateway, get out, get into another craft to go back onto the moon. But that hasn't been designed or built yet, let alone tested.
It's a lot of gear they got to design to get back to the moon, isn't it? A gateway, Artemis landing craft, new rockets and everything like that, new spacesuits, and of course they just had a change of presidency, possibly, if Trump loses all his cases that he's trying to fight in the thing. I mean, what's the position of Biden on the space front? Is he not really much interested in moon missions, do you think?
No, he's not. He's intimated that he will postpone it, which is a euphemism of saying cancel it. Because any president coming in will have to have their own imprint on NASA. Never a straight answer. No astronaut sent anywhere. Not always scientifically accurate. Numerous anomalies and scams abound. Take your pick. So because there'll be a new president, allegedly, I don't think there will be, but that's another story. Biden has decided that he will make his own imprint on this, and he will probably not do it because it will cost a lot of money. Well, it will cost no more money than keeping NASA going anyway, because most of the money going to NASA is not a vast amount of money these days, about $25 billion. It just pays people's salary. That's all budgets ever do. So whether they're going to the moon or not, it's going to cost the same, because all budgets pay people's salary at the end of the day. It doesn't buy rockets. It pays the people's salary to build the rockets. It doesn't buy space tracking systems. It pays people's salary to use them. It doesn't. I mean, all these things have to be paid for, but you're paying somebody's salary. So if you've got the money to do it, you may as well get on and do your gateway and get people onto the moon. It'd be nice to see it happening, and I'd love to see it happening, but I'm not holding my breath that it's going to happen any time soon, because, as you've already said, the radiation in space is the showstopper of space. There's Sorry?
I was going to say, Marcus, that this idea, we're going to go to the moon, we're about to go to the moon. NASA have been saying that now since the end of Apollo. And indeed, other countries like Russia and China have also, certainly since the 1990s, they've been saying the same thing.
Yeah,
it's something we're going to do. We're planning to go. But of course, it never really. This is about as far as it's gone. They've actually built a rocket, which might. Well, they could use it for other things if they don't go to the moon. They have actually built a launcher and a manned capsule. But as you say, this little space station that goes around the moon, the Gateway space station, that's a big project. It's a lot more complicated than Apollo with that.
Yeah.
And the lander, like you said, that's not been built yet. So I don't know if anyone really believes that 2024 is a realistic scenario, unless, of course, they plan to fake it again.
Well,
I mean, it could be.
Let's just say if they try to fake it this time, there are going to be so many people watching it who are fully informed as to what went on the first time. They're going to be watching out. They won't be able to get away with it this time.
They can't lose all their tapes and, all the stuff that was supposedly was for, because they presumably have to publish it instantly on the internet for people to look at.
Exactly. And film taken on the mission. The famous film of Armstrong and Aldrin putting up their little picture of the Earth in the window and saying, "Look, we're halfway to the moon." No, they weren't. Why was the blue outside the other window?
Why do they hold the camera so far back from the window? Why is it on the? They filmed it from the other side of the capsule.
Yeah, and they actually said that we've got the camera against the window. They were lying. These guys lie for a living.
Do you know what the Apollo supporters actually say about that? They say, well, they didn't want to film out the window directly because the camera lens might have broken the window. This is hardened against micrometeorite strikes.
Of course it is.
And they're worried that the camera lens might have bumped against the window and cracked the glass, or whatever. So the very strong material they use, the very strong glass they use for the window. I mean, it's getting dark. It's getting crazy. The defenders of this are getting really. They're letting their imaginations run away with them now. Yeah.
Like that famous explanation of how they managed to avoid the Van Allen belts. They took a polar route.
Oh, yes.
They didn't, because check any of the press packs, and I've got the Apollo 11 press pack. They went straight through the Van Allen belts. Launching from Florida, where they did, you fly it over Africa, then you see the Eye of Africa, the Richat structure. Then you go on to India and South America, and you go on around the Earth that way. You don't go anywhere near the poles.
It's not as if the Saturn V had a steering wheel.
I mean, it's not the direction of the moon, is it? The moon's in another direction.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing indicators as it went up, indicating left and north or something.
Turn left here.
yeah. Paul and Johnny, now you've introduced Andrew Johnson, who's also considered the Apollo missions as fake. What was your opinion, or what did you think when you interviewed Andrew Johnson on that subject?
Well, I mean, we looked at the moon landings before we obviously interviewed Andrew, but I mean, after that, when we looked at it even more, there's so many anomalies to it, and I always find that whenever you watch on mainstream TV, whenever they do any of these kind of conspiracy programs, they'll pick about 2 or 3 of the anomalies that they can explain, and they won't mention about any of the others that you can't. And they'll depict that as that's all of the anomalies, and that's how they present it. So that's something I got when I watch, knowing what I know now and looking at it, when I watch any of these mainstream TV shows on the conspiracy, beyond anything, not just the moon landings, but using that as an example. They'll frame it as this is everything that we know about it, and we've explained it. That's it.
Yeah, it's so sad that they keep coming up with. I mean, there are books being published this year, which attempt to refute the whole Apollo conspiracy. They say, well, of course there are stars. They talk about stars in the bloody sky for 40 years. These bloody flapping flags. They've been flapping for 50 years. It was Bill Casing who first suggested that, and that was in 1976. More or less the same time as the film Capricorn 1 came out.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing about the flags, because I was watching the flag setting up of Apollo 17, which was the last mission back in 1973, I think, around Christmas time, I understand, with Gene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt, who was the geologist that landed on the moon. And the video I saw showed them setting up the flag, which was the one that they had for all the previous missions. This particular flag had been hanging up in mission control. And someone said, oh, it's a good idea that this flag goes to the moon or something. Now, we've spoken to Scott Henderson on the Apollo Detectives, who showed us very close-up images of this flag, and it shows it's a wet flag. You can actually see the dampness in the wet flag. And we thought, oh, my God. Now, I actually wondered, because Schmidt says, or Cernan, I can't remember which one says, it's almost as if it's blown in the wind when the flag's moving around. I actually wondered if they'd deliberately made the flag wet to stop, to give it a sense of weight, to stop it blowing. And so therefore it's almost like a wet, damp cloth, and it won't billow so much. In the same way that it's been suggested that the lunar soil, to stop it making, when you throw it up in the air, it won't be like a smoky effect of light particles floating, that they mix that with a thin oil or something so it immediately falls back to the ground. I actually wonder if that was deliberately made wet for that reason. And in the video also saw is that when they sort of stretched the flag out, I heard a ping as the flag kind of like straightened out. And I thought, hang on a minute. So I rewound it and watched it again. I thought, there's definitely a ping sort of noise there that's going on. So I thought, well, let's just cross-reference this with other channels that have got the same footage. So I went onto other channels, NASA or whoever it was, and I saw the same scene, but this time it didn't have the ping sound. So I wondered, either is that ping sound being added on, or was that the original ping sound on the footage, but on the other clips, someone's managed to remove it? I don't know, but I thought it was a very suspicious thing.
There's certainly some weird stuff, because there's a picture on the official NASA website of, it was basically a sort of section for kids explaining about space and explaining about all the things that were wonderful about NASA. And one of the things they wanted to explain was that obviously in space, you can't hear anything. Space, nobody can hear you scream and all that. And they had this picture on their website of, I think it was Apollo 15, where the astronaut, was Dave Scott, was banging in the bottom part of the flag, of the flagpole. And you could hear him banging it. When somebody pointed this out, that you shouldn't be able to hear anything on the moon, that page was removed from the NASA website. But it was discovered on the Wayback Machine, and somebody brought it out and said, look, NASA have been caught out yet again. Because they keep coming up with these ridiculous ideas of how they got men to the moon. And we're expected to believe it. But the point is, NASA can't possibly go back and say, sorry, guys, it was all a political event. We were doing the very best job we could of fooling the Russians. The trouble is, we fooled the world as well. Because we couldn't get to the moon, we had to fake it. And if you've spotted the joins in the picture, well, it's only because you've been examining it for 50 years, you can see those joins. What we're going to do now is actually go back for real. That's the Artemis program. We're going back for real. No, they're not, because they can't get humans to the moon. They can get satellites, artificial satellites, or unmanned satellites. They can go to the moon. That's not a problem. But humans, we're very delicate little creatures. We've got to take our own atmosphere with us. And we don't like vacuum. And we can't survive without air. So we've got to have a spacesuit. Pity we haven't designed one yet. And the idea that humans can survive without pressure is nonsense. Because you try climbing Everest without oxygen, see how far you get. Maybe you get to 27,000 feet, but you get to 29,000 feet. There are very few people who can survive at that height without oxygen. It's not that the air doesn't have sufficient oxygen in it to breathe. The problem is the pressure. At the height of Mount Everest, the atmospheric pressure, which is 14.7 pounds per square inch at sea level, the height of Everest is 5 pounds per square inch. That is insufficient pressure to force the air into the lungs against the back pressure in the human body of 14.7 pounds per square inch. So you've got this imbalance between pressure. And you can't survive unless you can get sufficient air in. And that it's not the oxygen. There's plenty of oxygen up there. It's the pressure. And that point always seems to be missed. It always seems to be omitted because I don't think people fully understand it.
I've got a funny story about Mount Everest, actually, and it must have been something to do with the air pressure. And it concerns, I would say, someone in my removed, distant family. And I won't say names for fear of getting sued. But basically, he was a young lad, and he was given a lot of money to go up Mount Everest with his friend and a Sherpa carrying all the luggage and stuff like that. And they must have got to a certain point, but he ended up with a very sore, embarrassing problem on his bottom, namely a boil that started to swell up on his bum. It must be something to do with the change in altitude or something like that. And he couldn't go up because it's too painful to ascend up the mountain, and he couldn't go down. So he was stuck on Mount Everest with literally a pain in the arse. So what does he do? What do all good mountaineers do in that situation? They get on their satellite phone and ring their mummy. That's what he did. Really? He rang up his mum. He goes, "Mummy, I've got a boil on my bum and I'm up Mount Everest. What do I do?" So she basically said, well, you're going to have to get a sharp implement and sterilize it and stab it. And so, because his best mate was with him, his mate had to do it. And they soaked it in like hand gel or something. And his mate, he obviously became a very good mate after that. He had to stab this boil on his bum. And after that, it was all okay. The pressure subsided and he could walk back down the mountain again. So I'd imagine it's a bit like tyres expanding under some sort of vacuum or something like that. That's how he suffered. So I can understand the whole pressure thing completely.
Oh, yeah. It's pressure that's the problem, or lack of pressure. Because the higher up you go, the less pressure there is. That's why you see the International Space Station, there's very little pressure there. There is pressure. You get to the moon, forget it, no pressure. And that is the point that is, in all the discussion about the Apollo fakery, that is the one area that has not been addressed properly. I'm the only person I know that has addressed it because, as I say, I attended this talk in London. It's about September 2018 it was. Because the working of the KH-19 keyhole satellite had only just been declassified. And therefore, the designer of the cameras, the guy listening to, was able to talk about it. So it was very recent that the information, and I put 2 and 2 together. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, you've got to have pressure for film to work in a vacuum. What about Apollo? And I actually asked him it. I said, would this apply to Apollo? He said, of course it would. So Apollo shot to pieces.
Would they have somehow vacuum sealed the cameras on the Hasselblads in some way? Maybe just to, devil's advocate type of question.
No, it would be possible to do it, but they didn't do it because the number of times you can see pictures of the Hasselblad cameras attached to astronauts on their chest, they're not pressurized. It's a basic camera. I've actually handled a replica camera. You can get them from Hasselblad UK. Well, you can't get it. You can borrow one from Hasselblad UK. And they look identical to the cameras you see on astronauts on the lunar surface. The other thing is that, of course, there were film cameras, Mara 16mm film cameras mounted inside the lunar module as they landed. And that's fine up until the point you depressurize the whole lunar module to get out because there's no airlock. So those film cameras wouldn't work either. But video cameras, on the other hand, do work. But most of the film that we see is taken with film camera. And that is the difference. You've got to know the difference between a film camera and a digital camera. Or a video camera, which is digital. They're not affected by a vacuum in any way the same way.
Interesting.
So basically, Apollo is fake.
Interesting.
It couldn't happen.
One thing
you can prove me wrong on that, please do so.
One thing I want to ask you, Marcus, when the Apollo program began, do you think initially they went into it genuinely wanting to work in actually to get on the moon, and it come to a point where they knew that there's no way we could do this, and then that's when the fakery aspect came in? Do you think that's what happened? Is that how you view it? Yeah. That's
the famous speech by Kennedy, John Kennedy, in 1961. They had no idea of any of this. No American had been into space at that point. Alan Shepard, who was the first one up, and he only went up 100 miles, came down again. John Glenn was the first to orbit, and that was 1962. So they had no idea. It was Kennedy. He's a fairly canny politician. And he basically said, well, what can we do because the Russians had sent their Sputnik satellite up to orbit the Earth, which of course upset everybody. So Kennedy said, well, what can we do to upstage the Russians? And this was one of the suggestions. Well, put a man on the moon.
Which just like that.
Like that. But at that point, they had no idea what was in doing it because they didn't have the rockets. They didn't have and it was only after they started researching it. And my opinion is that they decided around the time of the Apollo 1 fire. When 3 astronauts, Grissom, Chaffee and White, were incinerated in a...
Because Grissom was quite outspoken about it, wasn't he?
He was. No, he was very outspoken about it, and with good reason, because he was probably the most respected astronaut at the time. So once they decided that they were going to do it, he was starting to get a bit outspoken about it. Whether it was a deliberate action to kill him, I don't know. There may well be implications about it, because his son, Scott Grissom, did get access to that capsule and did work out that there were some very strange things in the wiring and short-circuiting. Now, whether it was a deliberate action by NASA to shut Grissom up and to basically pass the warning on, look, guys, you get step out of line, this is what's going to happen to you, could have been it. Because don't forget, NASA operate on the mafia principle, the silent or the silenced.
There's also, Marcus, there's also the strange coincidence of Thomas Ronald Barron. Now, he was an ally of Grissom's in NASA at the time. What happened to him? It's a bit...
He was killed, wasn't he?
Just a coincidence, nothing to worry about, as David Icke would say.
Yes, he was killed on a level crossing in his car.
It was his family as well. It wasn't just him as well, was it?
His daughter as well.
The car just happened to break down as he was going over a level crossing, and apparently the barriers didn't go down and the bell didn't work and a train happened to be coming.
Yes.
It's terrible bad luck. And just this was around about the same time as Grissom died in the fire.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even a train spotter,
So
Had he got his timetables right, he would have known there was a train coming.
And ironically, the train was owned by NASA.
Oh, really?
Oh, my God, I didn't know that. Now that makes it even more
It was
dodgy.
carrying a few capsules and things to Florida or something.
Yes.
But he actually wasn't a NASA employee. He was an employer. Was it Boeing or something like that? He was a contractor with Boeing rather than a NASA employee. But he was allowed, obviously, to see how things. Well, I say allowed. He spotted things going wrong in the system and could see the whole thing falling down. And he wasn't like invited to testify. He just decided on his own back that he was dissatisfied with the way things were going, wasn't he? And decided.
He was actually employed by North American Aviation.
Yeah.
And he was a quality control inspector and inspected the quality control, which he found to be seriously lacking, and wrote a 500-page report on it, which is nobody's ever seen it. Nobody's ever seen that report. It was a 50-page summary of it, which is the only thing that has ever surfaced.
It's very convenient. They got rid of two members of the Apollo team who were working on the program, who really had serious doubts and serious concerns over safety and efficiency and effectiveness. Both died around about the same time in 67. And so if you were faking it, if someone was decided to put up a fake, you'd have to get these people out of the way. Yeah. You'd have to eliminate them.
Yeah,
because many of them hung themselves in jail cells whilst the CCTV was all switched off as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how these things happen, isn't it?
Weird, isn't it?
There were Hasselblad cameras in those cells in those days.
Yes, which failed at the right moment.
Now, can I hear a doorbell ringing? Who could be that?
Is it Santa?
Who could be that at the door? Is it Andrew Johnson?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for inviting me on to the Christmas special.
Welcome to Andrew Johnson. As we've been talking about the Apollo mission, here's the man that we've been talking about earlier.
Yes, indeed. But we won't go into the Apollo with Andrew because obviously, he's probably had his mince pie, so he's he is, But it's great to see you, Andrew. So, how are you? How are you? How have you been?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, just probably about as fed up as everybody else, but apart from that, okay.
Right, Andrew. What I want to ask? It's a Christmas show, and the old ghost, the ghost from the Christmas Carol. Well, and it's Paranormal Peep show as well in here with Unite Planet. So, what I want to ask is, have you got any favourite ghost stories? Either one that you've encountered yourself, or
tell us.
Well, actually, this goes back quite a few years. I've got two little ones. They're not particularly in depth, but one time I was going out with my dad, and we used to live in a terraced house, and we had a little car park, sort of gravelly car park just next to where we lived. It wasn't really our land. And I was just waiting to get in the car, and I heard these footsteps sort of walking. There was a pub just opposite our house. And I heard these footsteps walking towards the pub. And it was a quiet time of day. I wasn't expecting anybody to be around. I think it was like Sunday, sort of, tea time. Not many people around where we lived then. And I could hear these footsteps. So I went over to see what it was. And I poked my head round the corner, but there was nobody there. So I thought that was a bit weird. I was sure that I would have seen somebody if because I was close enough and the footsteps were close enough. So that was kind of odd. But the other one was actually in the house we used to live in. And we used to have one of these clothes racks which attached to the ceiling. And, it has like pulleys on it. So you let the rope loose and the thing comes down. You put the clothes on and you pull the rope and it goes back up. And we've got one here in this house, actually, a smaller version. But I was talking about this with my mum one time. And above this room, it was a big bathroom we used to have where we used to dry most of the clothes. And above that room, there was my sister's bedroom. And, and I actually heard when I was up there hoovering, because she used to give me money to hoover her room out for her. And while I was up there, I heard this squeaking noise. And this was the clothes rack downstairs. It was a pulley wheel squeaking. And I made a comment to this about this to my mum. And my mum says, "Oh yeah, the funniest thing was that Claire and Hilary, who are my sisters, they used to hear that noise in the middle of the night sometimes, as if this thing had been going up and down in the middle of the night. So that was a bit weird. But that was it. I mean, I haven't actually seen a ghost myself. I've heard a few stories myself, but not really experienced much.
Oh, great. So what's your favourite ghost story that you've heard?
Well, I mean, the stories that come to mind, there are many. I read a few ghost books, you know, in my youth, not so much in my adult years. But there was the famous one, this is quite a well-known one, of I think it's a place in York where there was a Roman road which had been built on somewhere in York, I think, or very near York. And there was somebody walking along the road, and they saw you know, a group of Roman soldiers walking along this road, but they could only see them from the shins up, you know, and the feet and ankles weren't visible, but they were in a ghostly form, you know, and that was because the road was that much higher than the original Roman road. So it's seemingly they were walking on the original Roman road, which was lower than the surface of the road. And so they'd seen this Roman, I suppose you'd say, I don't know if there's a century, but this group of Roman soldiers, you know, I can't remember the collective noun for them now, but they would, that's a fairly well-known story that I think more than one person has seen that. So yeah, and actually one of the interesting ones that I came across not too long ago, because it was again near where I used to live, was these ghost plane accounts where people see a plane go over like a Lancaster bomber and it appears to be crashing, and then there's no crash, you know, and there's been a couple of those in the Peak District actually, and there was one in Yorkshire, or Barnoldswick I think it was, which was near where I used to live, and that was featured again about 10 or 15 years ago in the local press there. So yeah, interesting stuff.
Ah, yeah. So as it's Christmas, what are your plans for Christmas? Anything you got planned for over the festive period?
Well, I'm going to be mainly stuck here, really. You know, we have some family around and stuff, but I unfortunately won't be travelling much this year, and we don't. We know my wife used to work Christmas. She's retired now, but she used to work pretty much Christmas. So we did. Christmas wasn't a particularly. We didn't do anything particularly special, you know. So, and I just regard it as the winter solstice. But one thing I will be looking out for, not on Christmas Day, but is the planetary conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, which happens, the best time is the 21st, although you'll be able to see it sort of a couple of days either side of that. And that's going to be in the southern skies after sunset. You'll only have an hour or two to catch it, and hopefully clear skies, about 15 degrees above the horizon. Look online for that. So I will be looking forward to that. And that conjunction hasn't happened like that for since I think 1623. So it's a very rare one. Although the next one I think is going to be in 60 or 80 years' time. So do have a watch out for that, everyone. I'm going to try and photograph that if I can.
So what we've heard, Andrew, is that there's like a shift of consciousness as we move into the age of Aquarius. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. I mean, yeah, there's some people are claiming this is one of the points where we went to the age of Aquarius. And of course, this has been talked about, I think, for at least 50 years. And it's one of those areas where when do you actually enter the next zodiac constellation, you know? And there's no specific time really, because it's quite a large scale thing that happens over maybe a couple of decades at least. So you could debate whether we're entering this age of Aquarius. And although people are saying that now, I'm immediately reminded of what happened in 2012, where there was claiming, you know, we're all going to ascend into this, you know, new spiritual state and stuff. And of course, there's no visible effects to me of that happening. I mean, it may have happened to some people that I don't know, but so we will see. You know, I don't like to predict the future.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what happens.
Well, it's great to have you on here, Andrew. Thanks for joining us on this Christmas show. I know you're very busy and you have to shoot off and everything. But before you go, I wonder if you've got any Christmas jokes you can share with us.
Yeah. Let's go for a slightly, you know, Did you hear about the dyslexic devil worshipper, Paul?
No.
He sold his soul to Santa.
Terrible joke. Oh well.
No, the
Thank
old
you.
ones
Thank you, Andrew, for joining us there.
Thank
That was
you,
really great to see you.
Okay, so thanks very much for inviting me on to say these few words. I wish everyone a good festive season and happy solstice. I generally don't say Christmas much as I used to because it is based around the solstice, the pagan festival. So I wish everyone a happy solstice and a merry new year.
Thank you, Andrew, for joining us there. That was really great to see you. So,
Andrew.
does anyone still believe in the idea of this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius? Ben, I mean, you come across anyone like that in your daily life?
Oh, all the time. I mean, the idea that there are sort of shifts on a consciousness level in terms of the collective consciousness of the people, of a population, is very, very real. Indeed, ancient cultures often had ideas about ages that change over time. Now, the age of Aquarius actually refers to an astrological phenomenon, which is called retrograde precession. There are astrological ages, it's all to do with when the sun rises in which sign, which changes over a period of, I think it's 26,000 years. It's a very long cycle. And since about the time of Christ, we've been in the age of Pisces. Now, we're about at the point where we move from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. Now, the exact spot when it happens, there's no moment we move into the age of Aquarius that all astrologers and indeed astronomers, because even though the two rarely combine, but there's no sort of dividing line between one age and the other. It's some astrologers claim it won't happen for another 100 years. Others claim it happened in the 1920s, things like that. But there's no doubt that if you are a believer in astrology, or like myself, even if you just entertain it and are open to the idea, which I am, although I'm not very focused on astrology, there are supposedly certain changes in group dynamics that occur at that time, and group dynamics within the planet as a result of that, which is very similar. It's very similar in many ways to other astrological forces, which they talk about. Like they'll say, well, Mars is in Aries or something. That means there's going to be a war or something. There's always various, if you read like the annual almanacs that come out that give predictions for the year ahead, it's all based on that. Only this is much more long term, because if we're in the age of Aquarius, we probably will be until sometime in the 22nd or 23rd century. So it's a very, very long-term force acting here. What I find interesting is that there are other changes in ages which are far more precise. For example, the changing of the Mayan calendar, which took place on the 21st of December 2012. I think maybe you remember the big 2012 phenomenon that happened at that time. And also, strangely enough, in 2025, which is just 4 or 5 years away, the Hindu calendar changes as well, and Marcus will maybe know a bit more about that because Nexus has just done an article all about that. But we've basically been in what's called the Kali Yuga, and Kali is actually the goddess of the underworld in India. Yes, that's it. Yes, and we're moving into the Arya or Satya Yuga, which is sometimes called the Golden Age, where it's rather like the astrological ages because there's basically a different god or goddess rules over it. And the Hindu pantheon has no end. There's numerous gods and goddesses. I think there's hundreds of thousands of them, actually. And so it's a different god or goddess ruling over that era. But again, it's very similar to the astrological ages in Western astrology. There's a general trend towards different ideas and different happenings and different occurrences. And maybe it's something to do with the collective unconscious that Carl Jung discovered. Maybe it's to do with the 100th monkey effect, which is believed to be a phenomenon in which ideas suddenly, you get like a punctuated equilibrium. Nothing happens for a long time. Then there's a sudden change and things like that's how it goes. And then there's another equilibrium, another sudden change. But so time will tell. But I'm very interested. I think it's a good time to be at this pivotal age, this kind of axis era where things are moving from one place to another. And it's we could have been born any time, and we haven't been born where these things happen in our lifetimes. And so we get to witness exactly what effects they will have. what they would be.
There's a
We
lot
don't
of
know.
solar activity as well. There's a huge electromagnetic flares heading our way to the point where it's going to start affecting our electronics and grids and electricals and all that kind of thing.
Is that
That's
the thing that
interesting,
happens every 11 years with the sunspots, or is this something completely different?
No, it is. It's the solar cycle. Yeah, we're out of the solar minimum now. It's interesting, Marcus. You could say that's because the solar maximum is when the sun is most active, and there's the maximum danger of radiation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're sort of entering that period now, and by 2024 we should be close to the solar maximum, and it was in 1969 as well.
That's right.
They do pick their dates, don't they?
Yeah.
When they want to get a roast.
The worst time possible if you want to avoid radiation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crikey. Bloody hell.
It's starting to build up again towards the maximum.
Mm.
I mean, looking at the surface of the sun now, it's starting to come up with some solar flares or some sunspots, which indicate solar flares, and they will get progressively more numerous over the next 7 or 8 years, and it'll gradually, and then it'll decline again. But as you say, the Apollo missions, 1969, was the height of a solar maximum, which is not a very wise time to go out in space.
Mm.
Unless you fake it.
Of course, yeah.
Thank you for that.
They just pull their visors down a bit, and they're okay.
Ben, how would you kind of quantify? Because I hear this a lot about this kind of like this ascension process and new ages of Aquarius and things like that. The problem I find is how would you quantify it? How would you say? I mean, for instance, 2012. It was supposed to be 2012. The big thing happens. How do we know what that big thing was anyway? If it did happen or if it didn't happen?
Well, a lot of people sort of got very, very disappointed because nothing really major happened on the 21st of December 2012. It was a fairly ordinary day, actually. I mean, it was in my personal life. My partner at the time, her mother died that day. So in my personal life, it was a big day for me and for her. However, generally it was a pretty ordinary day. However, I don't think that was ever what intended. I never actually expected anything major to happen. But all I thought was that it's like flicking a switch deep down in the sort of in the energetic levels of where we can't perceive things happening, because underneath the physical world there is like a world of energy, and it's sometimes called the ether. You may have heard that phrase before. And what happened was that was just a moment where the ancient peoples of the world actually knew, the Mayans, the ancient mystics of Central and South America, they knew that was when there would be like a flick of a switch in this etheric body of the earth. Now, when that switch was flicked, it doesn't immediately translate into activities that we can perceive in the world at large on the material level, because everyone was expecting like either there'll be a horrible disaster like in that awful film by Roland Emmerich, which there's a 45-minute segment of complete destruction, or it would be like we'd all suddenly wake up in the morning and we'd be like completely transformed. We'd be like the priests of the Mayan civilization. I said neither of those is going to happen. What's going to happen instead is nothing. What will happen is just forces were set in motion that possibly in the future would result in some kind of tangible change, some kind of something that would eventually filter up to the surface of the material world, and where we'd see something happen. Now, what in my view, that has happened. It took a few years, but the world we're living in now is totally different to the one before 2012. Indeed, on 2012, I mean, several weird things have happened that would have never happened before, would have been unthinkable before. Things that I didn't predict. For example, in 2017, we had the UFOs, the UFO phenomenon. There was a major transformation in how they were portrayed in the media. I've never seen anything like that before. And also, we had several things that weren't meant to happen in the world of politics. For example, Donald Trump becoming US president. That was not planned by those higher up, the global government. They didn't want him as the president. They also didn't want Britain to leave the European Union.
Yeah.
We had a referendum that we were supposed to, the Leave side, which I supported actually, was supposed to lose, and we didn't. Now that's very interesting, because you see, the people in the conspiracy theory world, as I found, they often portray the New World Order as something invincible, something all-knowing and all-powerful. But it's not. It is fallible. It makes mistakes. It can be conquered. It can be overwhelmed. And really, what's happened, there's been many occasions when there's been some pretty big snafus in the engine room of that agenda. And I hope they continue. I really do. I mean, obviously, there's an attempt at electoral fraud in the United States, which everyone can see. It's visible in front of us, and no one can really deny it. And that's another example of how one of the things that they said about the age of Aquarius, what some astrologers say is, because I don't know about these things particularly, I'm not an expert. One of the things they said about the age of Aquarius, secrets will be harder to keep. And that seems to be what's happening.
Which culture actually mentioned the secrets that can't be kept? Was it Indian culture?
That's Western astrologers that have said that.
I did hear years ago that the world, like 2025 or something, the magnetic poles of the world will shift. And someone said once, well, what will happen if the magnetic poles in the world will shift? And this other guy said, well, everyone's fridge magnets will fall off at the same time.
I could tell you about that, actually. If you, I know someone else will want to say something, but let me just, the magnetic pole shift is actually ongoing. It's actually quite a long process. It takes about 5,000 years, but it's getting close to its peak right now. It's been going since about the 25th century BC. Now, it's nothing to worry about. Everyone says, firstly, it's not one. There's not a single moment when it happens. It's a 5,000-year process, which we're kind of in the middle of. It'll take another 2,500 years for things to settle down once the poles are reversed. However, it's something that happens on average 3 times every million years, and it's not associated with mass extinctions or anything like that. But I think the fearmongers are going to try and make people scared of it. And it's rather like the 2012 phenomenon. They tried to put a lot of negative energy in Hollywood and that, with that Roland Emmerich film, that travesty. They tried to make everyone frightened of the 2012 dates. And so everyone would be just biting their nails and sitting at home when it happened. And in fact, it was a complete lie. And I think they're going to do the same with the pole shift.
Ooh, ding dong. There is another doorbell ringing. Ooh. Who could that be? Shall we have a look, everybody?
Hi, Andy and Neil. Great to see you both. And hi, everyone. And thanks for inviting me on your Christmas show.
We interviewed Colin. Hi, Colin. We interviewed Colin back in October, talking about his film, The Lawson. How are you, Colin?
I'm very well, thanks. Yeah, keeping very well. And I'm busy working on The Lawson, writing more scripts, because last time we spoke, I said I was going to do 3, but actually we've now realized that we can actually extend it to 6 without, diluting it really. So I'm really excited about doing that. So hopefully that's going to be our way forward to do it as a TV series for 6 with 6 episodes.
So you got the Lawson film online again, have you?
Yes, so The Lawson's online now. You can watch it at www.thelawson.com. You can buy access to it for £1.99. And it's on until 12th of January. So if people want to watch it, we hope you enjoy it. There's a new trailer online people can watch too. And it's got quite a Christmas feel, because really a lot of people in the United States particularly said they felt it was a contemporary Christmas carol. So it's quite a festive time to watch The Lawson, I think.
Do you have any ghosty stories that you could tell us as well, Colin?
Well, I've got a story, actually, and it's quite relevant now because of Christmas. And, at Christmas, we all want to be with our loved ones. And, my father, he passed away in 2007. And a psychic said, you'll always know when he's around because the pictures will actually be crooked. And quite frequently, the pictures in the house are actually on a slant, and we're always having to put them back. But more recently, my niece and I were in the sitting room, and we actually saw one of the pictures move. Both of us saw it. So it was kind of like weird. I mean, people might say it's something to do with the hook or something, but actually it did actually move. So in a way, clearly my father's around, and we're clearly having to keep moving the pictures back, but it's nice he's coming around to see us. So that's an interesting one for us.
And what other ghostly experiences have you had?
Well, interestingly, it was actually another experience with the same niece, and she was only about 8 months old, and my sister and her husband and the other children had gone to a wedding, and they asked me if I'd look after my niece, and I thought, okay, I will, and I couldn't get her to settle. She was crying, and I had to go around and get the neighbor to see if she could help me, and she did get her to settle eventually, and I was standing holding her in my arms, and suddenly I felt like there was a presence in the room, and I looked up and I actually saw my mum, who died about 3 years earlier. she was standing in the corner of the room smiling at me, and she looked exactly as I'm looking at you or somebody in the room, solid, and then she just disappeared. It was quite amazing, but just thinking about it, it was interesting that it was the same niece who saw the picture move. So maybe together maybe there's some psychic thing or something. But yeah, well, that was an amazing experience, very comforting experience actually. So my two kind of ghostly experiences in a way have been quite positive.
And how are you going to be spending your Christmas time?
Well, I'm going to be spending some time with family over Christmas, and I think it'll be a quiet one, really, as it probably will be for most people this year. But I think this year it's just something simple. I think is the key thing, really. And over the last few years, I've always felt Christmas can be overindulgent, and it's I think it's over the top. And I like the idea of just the winter festival in a way. It's the idea of celebrating something a bit more wintry and enjoying the season, really. And for me, I always find it inspiring for writing. So I'm sure I'll be doing a bit of writing as well. So which for me isn't work. So it's kind of like it's something I really enjoy doing, and I'll be going for walks and often on my own, because that's when I get my inspiration. So I like the winter season, really. I enjoy it. I like all the seasons, but winter I just find so atmospheric, and obviously Christmas and Christmas lights and things like that. So, but yeah, no, hopefully it'll be fun.
Right. Thanks for joining us, Colin. Have a great Christmas, and we'll see you next time. Cheerio.
Yeah, well, you too, and thanks guys for having me on the show. It's been great fun, and you have a great time this Christmas, and everyone watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you next year, hopefully, and to tell you more news about The Lawsons. So, and don't forget to watch it, www.thelawson.com. Thank you.
So we're going to take a break here on the Paranormal Peep Show Unite Planet Christmas special. Thanks very much so far to Ben Emlyn-Jones, Marcus Allen, Andrew Chaplin, Johnny Sinclair, and Paul Northridge up in the corner with his Christmas decorations galore. You're really outdoing all of us. So we're going to come around yours for Christmas. We're going to be your six people in your bubble. So join us in a minute.
So, this is your dream. This is what warms your lost soul in the early hours when nightmares breach the dams of broken dreams.
Hi, welcome back to the Paranormal Peep Show in conjunction with Unite Planet for our joint Christmas special, where you are listening to myself, Neil Geddes-Ward, Andrew Chaplin, Ben Emlyn-Jones, Paul Northridge, Johnny Sinclair, and Marcus Allen of Nexus magazine. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us for part 2. And of course, we got Nexus magazine. Yeah, thank you, Marcus.
That's all right.
On all good bookshops. All good bookshops.
Yes.
And does it come with a little free mask? Because like a lot of these magazines used to have free gifts. I'm just wondering, maybe in this day and age, you should have a little throwaway gift or something that comes in a little polythene bag on the front, a little mask. Might convince people to buy it. Oh yes, it does.
Well, not with Nexus. That comes with good information to allow you to make a decision as to whether masks are relevant.
Okay.
They're not.
Nothing to be sniffed at then.
And if you've got time, I can add a bit of humour here, because I can show you the mask I've got. Shall I do that?
Ben.
So I'll just go and get it.
That's the one.
Oh. Now,
most people don't realise that the virus is 1,000 times smaller than any gap in a mask. It makes no difference at all.
Yeah, I've seen on the packets it says not suitable for protection against COVID-19.
Yeah.
So, and they're made in Indian sweatshops.
Shall I just... I'll go from where Marcus left off. Hey, Marcus, That is pretty good, but I think you'll agree that my mask is superior.
Nice one.
COVID 1984 for those that are listening.
You can always wear one of those, and then
is it made out of your old Y-fronts, Ben?
Yeah.
It's an old white shirt, but I'll tell you what, I love. I know that you can get exemption certificates and things like you were talking about, Neil. But I love wearing that actually because people come up and ask me what it means, and I've had a couple of times that's happened. I've got a few more with subversive messages on too, so that's another option of getting back at the system. That makes you wear these horrible things.
Same effect you would have had when you walked around Oxford wearing your tinfoil hat.
I remember that one, Mark. Yes. That was fun, that was.
That was great. I loved it.
Was you allowed, you weren't thrown out of banks or anything like that wearing a tinfoil hat, was you? I mean,
it wasn't. I didn't go in any, luckily, but it was a bit tall and a bit sharp. It was my Oxford Dreaming Saucers Truth Tour, and we had a good time that day, didn't we, Marcus?
Oh, great. Yeah, lovely time.
Excellent. Is that at the door now of our studio? Let's have a quick look. Oh, it's Philip Kinsella, everyone, who's been a guest on our Peep Show before.
Hello, Philip.
Hi, Philip. How are you?
Hi, Philip.
Hi, guys. I'm fine, thank you very much, and Merry Christmas to everyone.
And how's 2020 been for you so far, Philip?
2020's been very tough, and it's not just because of what everyone's been through. I think in terms of work, I mean, in a good way, I've been able to work on and complete Guardians of the Dead. That was the book that dealt with the afterlife. So that came out this year. And it's also given me the opportunity to work on some other projects as well. But it has been a very tough year. I think we've all felt that, really. Sometimes you find yourself being thrown by a lot of what's been going on in the world. And I think a lot of people have feared that because of not knowing, the fear factor. So it's been kind of tough, really hard for me as well. Not just, I think it's important that people are honest, because sometimes people don't talk. They don't really say what's really going on. But, there's been a few occasions where I've been anxious, a little bit low. But it's good that we've had the connections on the internet and Facebook and, other media outlets so that we can stay in touch with one another. And I think that's an important tool. Can you imagine what it would have been like if we had no one to communicate with, bar from the old telephone? So that's been a blessing. And I think a lot of colleagues and associates have kept our spirits high in terms of, helping one another, inspiring one another, motivating one another. And that's really, really helped. So I'm really grateful for all the people that I know that have really helped me, and support me in those areas, because we all need supporting. We all need that help. We all need that motivation, not just me, but other people. So it's been really hard, but it has given me a chance also to focus upon my future. So I've got a lot of ideas about where I want to take myself within that future, and I'm sure that we do have one.
And what plans have you got for next year then?
The plans I have, I think that I'm going to be working on several new projects. Of course, my passion is ufology and life after death. They both kind of I know I've written more books on UFOs than the afterlife, but I think the main drive for me is when you're looking for the truth and you want the truth. And now dealing with a lot of experts and a lot of like-minded individuals, authors, researchers, friends, associates as well, it's given me cause to reach out further in terms of investigation and also applying some form of theoretical dynamics as to what we may be dealing with in regard to the UFO phenomena and also the psychic phenomena, because as I've said before, and there seems to be a correlation between the two, even though that they seem or appear to be separated. So I'm going to be working on several new books for next year, and if all's well, I mean, I'd like to travel a little bit and see where that leads me. And articles, because Philip Mantle and Chris Evers, Philip Mantle, UFO Royalty, being the publisher of Flying Disc Press, he has been really supportive as well, and so has Neil Geddes Ward, and also Chris Evers, because a great connection. Paul Sinclair also, the author, Paul Sinclair, researcher. And also I've got to say that our American associates like Dr. Arena Scott, Earl Grey Anderson, Peter Robbins, Kathleen Marden, Terry Lovelace, and many others have been a real support to me. And, you know, it's really nice to know that we have that connection, that link that's abroad as well as just in England. So I'm very honored to be connected with them, all of them, and subsequently moving forward with regards to the research. So I've got some plans lined up for what I want to do, what I want to achieve for next year. Yeah, working hard as usual.
Do you think we'll get disclosure in 2021, Philip?
With regards to disclosure, I don't feel that that is going to happen. And I know people will reject that claim, but we've got to understand that the phenomena is not as simple as first imagined. The way that we looked at UFOs back in the 1940s and 50s was very much physically constructed spacecraft with physical beings, as it were. We're finding out now that the phenomena is operating on a far more complex level, because, as I've always said, there are two components to this. One is the physical part, and the other one is the integration on a very strong conscious level with regards to the connection of what goes on in terms of UFO encounters or abductions. It's not like they're going to land on the White House lawn. I mean, if they did that, I mean, there'll be uproar, and they may be blasted for the face of the planet. And I don't think it's as simple as that. I think the phenomena is far more complex and structured, and I believe that a lot of people may not get their heads around it. So this disclosure, you know, we've been hearing this for many, many years, and you also get cases where recently that's come out within the media about, you know, the Navy's admittance into the UFO phenomena being real, and then all of a sudden it goes quiet. It's buried, and we find this theme constantly going round in circles. So we haven't really come anywhere since the inception of the Roswell, New Mexico crash landing of a apparent UFO, which I believe was a craft of unknown origin. We're still where we were all those years ago. There's more awareness, there's more acknowledgement, there's more respect, as it were, but we're still no nearer in truly understanding what we're dealing with. And that is because the establishment, or the system as I call it, are unwilling to reveal or open up the files to tell us what they have, what they know, and share it among the masses. No, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
And how will you spend Christmas this year, Philip?
I'll be spending Christmas with family. I was going to say the Greys, but I think that might be, you know, people might find that I'm only joking. You've got to have a wicked sense of humor. But certainly reflecting as well over what's happened this year. I think seriously reflecting on where, I think all of us will be reflecting about where we've been and where we're going. And it can be a good time, it can be a sad time. But I just hope and I pray that everyone that I know and their loved ones are safe, and that they have a good Christmas, because, you know, even in light of what we've gone through, we still have to enjoy ourselves, you know, so it's not all doom and gloom. I think we're going to see a little light at the end of the tunnel somewhere along there.
Okay, thanks, Philip. Well, thanks very much for joining us. Have a lovely Christmas, and we'll catch you next year. Cheerio. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And thank you also for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. And I'm sending a very warm Merry Christmas to all the viewers out there, and hoping that they're all safe and they have a brilliant Christmas, a great time, and keep your eyes to the skies.
Yeah, well, I mean, so Ben, you're obviously, you produce videos every year about the disclosure thing, and you say, oh, this year wasn't a disclosure thing, but sometimes you have extra information that sort of talk about like certain things have been released, like in 2017, the Nimitz videos and things like that. I mean, obviously with Trump, he wasn't really committing himself to any kind of UFO information. What's your thoughts on disclosure for next year as we ask that?
It's difficult to know, Neil, because this is one of the things that people always say, well, when's disclosure going to happen? And it's always like, well, there's always like, it always appears that something's going to come about, and that's leading towards a public recognition that that these things exist and that the cover-up essentially is over. On the other hand, it's sometimes people say, well, that can never happen. It won't ever happen. And there's no way that can ever happen. I'm what we call willing disclosure. That is the government simply telling us. I used to say it was not possible. I used to believe it was not possible. Now I'm not so sure, especially in this post-2016 world that we're living in, where all kinds of other things I thought were impossible have happened. So who knows? Who knows that they could actually come clean and say, well, the various governments of the world, it might not necessarily be the United States, it might be one of the others, could come forward and say, well, we've known all this all along. There's even some people who claim that this is actually going to happen, and everything that's happened since 2017 is a process leading up to that. And they're just trying to kind of like ease us into it gently so we don't freak out, to give us some kind of cultural immunization to prevent too much shock, some kind of shock as a result of this. But one thing's for sure, I mean, if ever the truth was revealed about this, then you know that the deep state is in big trouble, because the cover-up of extraterrestrial life and everything associated with it, including the absolutely decisive physical evidence that's been gathered over the years at places like the Roswell incident, are kind of they're kind of quintessential to the existence of the New World Order. You take those things away, and the New World Order is impossible. So
there's two things I want to add to that. Number one, have you guys seen the press release about Israel? There's like an Israeli defense minister or something like that, basically saying that Trump knows that UFOs exist. He's got the information, but he's going to sit on it.
Jaime Shed, what Jaime Shed said is incredible. I mean, now
Shed.
That's his name. Jaime Shed. General Jaime Shed of the Israeli.
Would you be in Hewitt? Sorry.
Yeah, America's not the only country that has a space force. Israel has one too. It's the I forgot what it's called now, but it's basically the space defense area of the Ministry of Defense of Israel. And this guy's been running it for 30 years. So he's not some kind of loony like us. He's a totally different kind of person to the way the skeptics like to portray us, the stereotype the skeptics love. He's a guy you cannot discredit any more than you can. It's even more so than perhaps David Fravor, the pilot, and these other people who've been talking out about this. And he said that, the thing is that the article, there was an original article in Hebrew, that's colloquial Hebrew, which is the constructed language of Israel. And that original article was never translated by the publication that put it out. It was translated later by others, such as the Jerusalem Post. He said they used the word Galactic Federation, but when I actually ran that through Google Translate, it came out as it was actually Space Unity. So it's maybe a slightly different meaning, because Galactic Federation sounds a bit Star Trek-y, doesn't it? Mm. But I think this is why people are going to try and discredit him a bit. But I honestly don't know where this is going to go. I mean, I don't know whether he's going to say any more. I know he's writing a book. I'm curious to read it. I hope that will be translated. But for someone in his position, especially since the Bereshit moon landing failure, has turned the eyes of Israelis, certainly, towards the sky. And it's a very, very small country with a small population. Word gets around, who knows? I mean, and as for Trump knowing about it, President Trump has made some extraordinary statements regarding UFOs, which makes me wonder what he's really thinking, because he certainly knows more than he's saying. When he said, I've heard a bit about it, but, I don't really believe it, not particularly. He's been briefed. He's definitely been briefed. So
we've also got this very strange kind of like thing going on at the moment. I personally think it's human. but who knows? It could be like the crop circle thing, the monoliths, the strange silver monoliths.
Yeah.
I believe most are human, and I say that because some of them have rivets. However, it could be like the crop circle effect. So there could be some aliens that are doing crop circles, but also some humans tagging on and doing their own. There could be some monoliths, who knows, that are alien, but then humans do their own. What are your guys' thoughts on that? And more importantly, why? What's going on here?
Well, at the last count, there are 12 monoliths now. From the Utah one, which is the original one. It's interesting that once people discovered it, they started looking on Google Maps to find out if it had existed before it was identified by those rangers. It had been there for 5 years before anybody spotted it.
Huh.
And they traced it on Google Maps because you get... Google Maps are updated quite regularly. Obviously, in Canyonlands National Park, which is where it was, it doesn't happen very often. But I think it was October 2016, which was the earliest point that it was identified. And then one appeared in Pennsylvania outside. Oh, where's he? Oh, here we go. One appeared in Pennsylvania outside Joe's Candy Store. And there was another one in Colombia near Bogota. There were 2 in Belgium. One in Romania, which we heard about. There were 3 in Britain, 1 on Glastonbury Tor. Now, if you've ever climbed Glastonbury Tor, you'll know it's not exactly an easy climb. To carry something that size, which said not Banksy or something like that on it, it just seemed to be a strange thing to have done. And then in the middle of Dartmoor, we get another one. What's going on? And then I think one of the ones in Belgium, or 2 in Belgium, one of them is gold, as opposed to the silver or the stainless steel ones that we've seen. And the one on the Isle of Wight got pushed over because it wasn't secured very well. Somebody came and polished it up and put it back up again.
Oh, good. It seems to be some kind of, it's like a real life LARP that's going on. It's a viral meme in real life. It's rather like those naked Trump statues that appeared in 2016, or people dressing up as clowns. Do you remember that? It's like the original one in Utah. That is still a mystery. I mean, I obviously, based on the way it was built, it's made by somebody. It's man-made by some artist or something. But nobody has ever attributed it to any artist. The guy they said, John McCracken, he died in 2011. It couldn't be him. So that is still mysterious. And the question is, what purpose do they serve? I mean, it's obviously there's a monolith map now. There's like a database called Monolith Tracker, and there's actually. I mean, you look at it, it seems to be mostly in Europe and North America, but there are a few in Australia, there's one in North Africa, there's one, as Marcus said, in Colombia. But it seems like this is a craze that's spreading across the world. And I mean, whoever's responsible for these, it's probably a healthy sign, because obviously these appear to be, the ones I've seen appear to be works made by people. They are man-made works. But it's obviously people have an open mind now to the mysterious, which maybe they didn't have before, which is probably quite healthy. It is.
In fact, could it possibly be to do with a film? Because going back to the clown thing, Ben, apparently that was when It was about to come out, and the whole clown thing was a bit of a kind of like a promotional thing for It, as it turned out. Do you think this monolith thing later on down the months could be some kind of like prelude to some alien film or something about monoliths? It's
a piece of viral marketing. I did wonder if there's some new silver Toblerone coming out, because it's that kind of it looks like it's that kind of shape, and the first one was anyway. I know they vary in shape now, but I don't think there's a big plan behind it as such, as far as I can see. They appear to be located in random areas, although some of them are in significant locations, like the one at Glastonbury Tor. And I've climbed Glastonbury Tor a few times. Whoever put that up there, they were very determined. They may have assembled it on the ground and carried it up, or they may have carried the components and assembled it on the top of the Tor. Either way, that's quite a feat.
Yeah, it seems odd that they weren't spotted, because there are people on Glastonbury Tor virtually all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It must have been done at night. that it must be done at like 3:00 in the morning.
Well, wasn't the Utah one taken down at night, Ben? Because
it was just unfortunately the Utah one was taken down a few days after it was erected. It was some local people who objected. They basically environmentalists who were concerned about the desert ecology. And not the monolith itself, of course, is not harmful, even though it was going to be demolished anyway because the people had no planning permission. But they were concerned about the visitors, that people dropping litter and things like that. So they went and they destroyed the monolith. They put it down. They pulled it down. What happened to the fragments, I don't know. But that one and a couple of others have gone as well. Some Christians took the first California one down. There's been 2 in California. They said they thought it was satanic or something like that, or communist or something. I don't know what they said about it, but they took it down. But there was a couple of others. The one in Romania's gone as well. Yeah. But the one I'm pleased the one in the Isle of Wight at least has been restored. I wonder if David Icke did it.
It's his transmitter. Ever since he's been taken off of YouTube, this is the only way he can get his broadcasts out, you see. Paul, do you think there's going to be any kind of disclosure next year, or we're going to get more information on UFOs?
I think with the UAP, the Tic Tacs is also kind of like a disclosure already. But really, I think, do they want to really expose UFOs exist? Because then it's going to be free energy out there. I think, really, I don't think any disclosure will really happen, in my opinion.
Well, what do you want to ask Ben? Oh, sorry, Marcus, you first. Sorry.
Yeah, it's interesting you say about free energy because the interview we had with Rasa, a few months ago, where he was talking about what he was working on in China, where it's basically quantum energy, or as I call it, 0-point energy. Now, if he's got that working, and it appears that he has, a 10-megawatt power station is not to be sneezed at. Obviously, it's not been announced yet. There's been no publicity about it because there probably won't need to be. Information will come out. But if that is now possible, if quantum energy or 0-point energy can be harnessed, it ends the whole climate change problem. It ends the whole fossil fuel problem. It ends the whole energy problem because we've got unlimited energy. The idea of cutting back on energy production is so much genocide because there are so many people who will benefit from it. If energy is available to everybody, it's cheap, it's non-polluting, it can be installed anywhere, then the world will change very dramatically. Because just in the last 200 years, the idea that energy cannot help humans is a ridiculous idea. Of course, in the last 200 years, we've gone from a galloping horse being the fastest means of transport to spaceships. That's in just 200 years. And you can imagine what we could do in the next 50 years, with all the technology that is available. So I'm very excited about the future. I think it's going to be even more dramatic than we've seen in the last 50 years.
Do you know, Marcus, the issue of free energy it's another of these cornerstone subjects, which are essentially our weather vanes for the health of the New World Order. Like the UFO one, I think, again, the declassification of free energy, which would mean that everyone basically could have all the energy they needed in the world, which, as you say, would eliminate environmental destruction. It would eliminate poverty. It would free us and improve our standards of living in every country on Earth so much. It's incredible. The reason fossil fuels have become basically the only fuel allowed, apart from the other things such as renewables, which can't really replace them, is that energy control is essential for the deep state. They ration energy, they make us pay for it, and by doing that, they keep us in energy dependency. And to remove that energy dependency, I think, would be another of these things that would indicate that they really have totally lost their grip on this world. And so I very much look forward to where it goes with Rasa. I've just been watching, actually, the Fire from Water, the one about the cold fusion cover-up, which is another very interesting documentary. I'm really, really excited, that this is happening. I don't know. There's no guarantees. No one knows where this is going to end, but goodness me, it's exciting to see the beginning.
Johnny, you were going to ask a question.
Yeah, going back to disclosures. So I want to ask Ben, because I know you look into the skeptic side of things as well, and I know you do a lot of that. So how do you think, if we get full UFO disclosure, or near full at least, how do you think those hardened skeptics will respond to that? Where do you think they will, be on that, if that ever happens? What will their response be, do you think?
That's a good question. I mean, in my book, Roswell Rising, A Novel of Disclosure, I portray this situation in fictional form. And in that book, as you know, if you've read it, they all commit suicide. that probably won't happen in real life. I put that in as a kind of slightly humorous element into the story. I think a lot of them, when faced with irrefutable evidence, will come round and they'll accept that they were wrong. They probably won't say, "Oh, I was wrong about this." They'll probably try to bury their past and pretend they never saw anything. There's others. I mean, some particularly doctrinaire and very, very narrow-minded people within their community who will refuse to accept the evidence no matter what it is. People like Professor Brian Cox, for example. I think he will simply just not talk about it. He may take some time off from his media career. He will come back just talking about a completely different subject. That's what I guess will happen from my own studies of the skeptic movement and my own involvement with them, to just see what the other side is thinking. But it's unpredictable.
Ben, there's always like a fallback position. So first of all, they'll say something doesn't exist. So say for instance the New World Order. The New World Order doesn't exist is what they'll say. And then you'll show them like a video of Tony Blair, George Bush, Daddy, George Bush Senior, David Cameron, all talking about the New World Order. Their next fallback position is, oh well, it does exist, but it doesn't mean what you think it means. It means whatever they think it means. Do you know what I mean? So there's always a fallback.
Psychology, it's a difficult psychology, and cultural analysis is always difficult to predict. I know that from one of the skeptics already, actually, what he's saying is maybe an indicator. His name's Mick West, and he's actually a very unoriginal and boring skeptic. He doesn't. I don't know if you've seen him on. He's been on Joe Rogan's show 3 times. He's been on Joe Rogan's show, which really indicates how much Joe Rogan's gone downhill in the last couple of years. He doesn't even say anything that I couldn't make up and other people couldn't make up. He says, "Oh, the Tic Tac footage, it's a seagull. The gimbal, it's an aeroplane." I mean, he doesn't even come up with anything particularly groundbreaking. He doesn't even come up with joyriding ice cream vans and truckloads burning manure, and something a little bit more creative, like at least as the others try to use their imagination. As foolish as they are and as wrong as they are, at least they have a bit more daring to them.
Talking of ice cream vans, that's just remind me, I was talking to my son who's at Edinburgh College doing a sound production course at this moment, and I spoke to him over FaceTime on Facebook yesterday, and he's just moved into a new abode in Edinburgh, and he said it was like 11:40 last night or the night before, and he heard an ice cream van ding dong ding going down the street, and he thought, what the hell is an ice cream van ringing its bell for, trying to get customers at 11:40 at night? And he thought, this place is weird. It was just baffling, And I thought, unless it's some sort of new way of people selling drugs on the streets of Edinburgh, they bought an old ice cream van. They go around sort of like, come and get your smack or whatever, ding dong, Really weird. I mean, what little kids are going to go out and get an ice cream at 11:40 at night? It's crazy, isn't it? Especially in December. Crazy.
Kids, isn't it?
Yeah. Talking of ding dongs, I hear a doorbell.
Wow, that's good time.
Ding dong, ding dong. Hey, everybody, it's Ronnie Kinsella.
Hey.
Hi, Ronnie.
Hello, Ronnie.
Welcome to the Paranormal Peep Show. We've just been speaking to Philip earlier. How are you?
Hi, guys.
And how's all your projects been shaping up for this year?
They're fine. They're all finished. I'm not working on anything else at the moment, but I will be next year, which will be a better year, I think.
And what sort of projects have you got lined up for 2021?
Yep, I'm working on a book called The Infernal Deception. That probably will take about a year to write, because I've got to do some research and whatnot. But I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to also have it illustrated, so the pictures will take some time. And I'm also doing a number of illustrations for Philip Mantle for his T-shirt company. And so that's going to keep me preoccupied. And I'm also working on something for someone else. It's a sculpture. It's like a digital sculpture. So that the creature, I can't say what it is, but he's going to take some time. It's going to be a bit of a challenge, but I can do him.
And have you got any goals set for next year, like learning new software? Because I know you're pretty keen on learning all these new art machines and things.
No, not at the moment. I think the shock of 2020 has left a bitter taste in all our mouths, I think. But I think I will I will try and perfect my art, because there's always room for learning more and more on the ZBrush, the 3D art I actually will use. So I shall be working on the art, because trying to make them look, the monster effects look more realistic. You know, I'm never happy with a piece of art I do. Others are, and I'm grateful for that. But being the artist, you're always critical, and you always find something that niggles you. So it'll just carry on with that, I think, with the art. That's going to be marvelous. I love the art.
Could you tell us about any paranormal happenings that's happened in your family, Ronnie?
Yep. My uncle Bob, bless him, is departed. He's gone, bless him. But he actually, I remembered I think it was the early 80s. He was a very down-to-earth chap. He was a builder. He was a jack of all trades. It's your typical lovely bloke, my Uncle Bob. I'll never forget when he told us that he had seen a UFO. And this is a man who was really down to earth. And we went to see him and my Auntie Betty. And I couldn't believe it. You know, this old man, he sat us down and he was telling us about having witnessed this gigantic cigar-shaped ship. I think he stated that it actually came out of the ocean, because they lived near the sea, and he used to take his dog walking along the beach when he saw this thing rising up out of the water. It was enormous. And something about all these lights going up into it or coming out. But, you know, back then I had not much interest in UFOs. So it was extraordinary that he relayed this story to both Philip and myself. And I was absolutely gobsmacked. You know, a builder, my Uncle Bob, sitting down, and he even said, if you don't believe me, I don't blame you. And I said, Uncle Bob, I do. You're the most straight-laced bloke around. And he was telling us about this gigantic cigar-shaped silver ship rising out of the water, the ocean. And I don't know what happened after that. I can't remember. But it shook him up. I remember the gossip at the time when he saw it, and it was all hush-hush. I mean, we're talking about the 80s, and, you know, it was all like taboo. But he actually relayed that story to Philip and myself. And I'll never forget, I was actually shell-shocked. And, I mean, it wasn't even for me tongue-in-cheek, because I actually believed him. I knew what he saw was what he said he saw. And, you know, for a gentleman like him, that really was extraordinary. The funny thing is, when he had relayed that, I let it go. I forgot about it for years and years, because I really had no interest in the UFO enigma, even though we both had seen these things. It's as if something just pushed it aside until you see more and more of them later on in life. And then you really do want to, like Sherlock Holmes, get to the bottom of it. Methods of deduction, although they haven't helped at all, really, because we're still none the wiser. But that's my story about my lovely uncle, who was down to earth and an honest man, a good chap.
How are you going to spend Christmas this year?
Well, it's going to be a quiet Christmas, as it is for a lot of us. But we're going to spend it with Mum, and then we're going to spend it hopefully with our sister, very small. Family gathering to have dinner with her, you know, on Christmas Day. So it's going to be very quiet.
Okay, thanks for joining us, Ronnie. Have a lovely Christmas, and we'll catch you in 2021. Cheerio. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me on your wonderful show, and may I wish you all a happy Christmas.
Well, there we go. That was Ronnie Kinsella, everybody. Twin brother of Philip. So in case you thought you were seeing double, no, you wasn't. They look alike and sound alike, and they even have the same interests. So it is very hard pressed to know one from the other. But there are minute differences in their DNA that only I can spot. Anyway, so ice cream vans, Ronnie Kinsella, where are we going next with this?
So we're going to find a segue, isn't it?
Yes, a stunned silence. So, guys, who on Unite Planet, have you lined up a list of people you're going to interview next year?
We're kind of in the middle of it in a way, aren't we, Paul? I think a lot of them are returning ones. We've got Mark Conlon. He's agreed to, and Michael Feely as well.
Yeah.
And we may pop over to Oxford sometime and see if Ben's in.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Great. You'd be very welcome.
It's been a while. I think I think it's due.
Definitely.
Anyone else? Have we got anyone else, Paul, lined up?
I think it's always got to be Andrew Johnson. I think he's always
he's a regular, yeah.
He's only just down the road from you, isn't he? He's like a neighbouring village almost, isn't he?
That's right.
We'll just ring him on the board.
He's only a mask's width away or something, isn't he? Yeah. So, I mean, are you in a kind of a certain tier in your area? You know, like tier 1 or 2 or 3?
We're in 3.
3. That's pretty heavy stuff then. Yeah? I mean, do you see any evidence of it being, you know, like in the sense of, have you heard of anyone saying, oh, they've got COVID-19 or anything like that?
My uncle has just come down apparently with COVID-19, but all the symptoms are of flu. So, you know, it's one of them, isn't it?
It's one flu of them. Season. All the flu records seem to have disappeared off the scale or something. Is that right, Andy? You saw something about that? Like there's no records for flu this season or something?
I'm not sure about there's no records for flu, but I am very suspicious that flu is actually now being not misdiagnosed, being construed as COVID.
Conflued.
Conflued. I mean, the data and statistics of it all is just an absolute mishmash of just. I can tell you something that is kind of, I suppose, anecdotal, but from a trustworthy source. A friend of mine, I won't name her, but she has an auntie who sadly became very depressed and she killed herself. She hung herself, unfortunately. She tested positive for COVID. So guess what was written on the death certificate?
Yes.
COVID.
Oh, really?
She died from COVID, apparently, even though she actually sadly took her own life. If you kind of take that as a micro thing and expand it out, and then you think about the doctors that have been writing COVID on their death certificates, and there's been YouTube videos of doctors stating that they're being pressured into writing COVID on the death certificates. And also the same person that I was talking to has had another couple of deaths in the family and has spoken to funeral directors, 2 separate funeral directors for separate people. And they've basically said that there is no extra uptake in terms of the amount of bodies they're seeing coming their way. The deaths are as per usual, as per normal. This time of year is slightly more because of the flu season. So, make of that what you will, really.
So there's no coffins with barcodes on, that kind of mass productions thing, you know? Buy 2 get 1 free on the old Undertakers, anything like that? No.
Do you know what the one of the funeral directors said? Kind of not exactly off the record, but kind of to one side, away from the actual funeral itself. Because my friend's quite vocal in terms of how she feels about it. She thinks it's a load of BS, basically. He basically said at some point, someday, the world will look back and look at what a complete farce and absolute whole scam the whole thing has been, basically. So, and that's coming from a funeral director, not, tinfoil hat or kind of, Dave down the road. This is somebody who deals with death all the time. He was absolutely convinced it's a complete scam. There is a virus, but it's the numbers and the hysteria around it that is very much in question with this guy.
And then he said, "Excuse me, whilst I go and do another TikTok video."
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, this is the thing. I've had big old debates on mainstream sheeple, as we kind of like call them, about this kind of thing. So there's two things I want to kind of like know about actually as a kind of prelude to this. First of all, do you remember in China when we had the secret video footage of someone in the streets and there's people just dropping down dead everywhere in China? Saw it on BBC, saw it on ITV, everywhere, just people dropping down dead, blah, 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 blah. Literally in the streets, walking along and just dropping dead. Why isn't there a single person that has been filmed in the West doing that if it's the same virus? That's number one. Number two, we're told that black people and ethnic people are more susceptible to it and have a more chance of dying. I was kind of like on tenterhooks waiting after the Black Lives Matter marches with a lot of ethnic people in close proximity without face masks in London marching en masse in thousands. I was thinking, okay, what's going to happen here? Either there's going to be a massive spike, an absolute massive spike in cases in about a week's time, because obviously you've got to take into account the time of people getting infected, spreading it around and showing symptoms. Nothing. There was no spike. Why are we getting a spike now, apparently, as opposed to the BLM marches? I kind of lost track. Where was I?
The only Spike I know is Spike Lee, but it's a different.
So there's that, and what was I talking before? I said,
I know I think what they want to do is the reason they're saying there's a spike now is because they want to justify continuing the lockdown. This is because they've got the virus, they've got the vaccine rolling out now. They can hardly say right now, oh, it's okay, it's going away, because people will be less likely to have the vaccine. And Pfizer won't get their trillions. I think they're getting out. This is the hottest big pharmaceutical product that's ever come on the market. I mean, it really is.
Did you see Matt Hancock crying on the news? Oh, God. Good God. I mean, there's freeze frames of him actually smirking. So he's kind of like, he's doing
hiding it, isn't he? Yeah.
And he's a worse actor than he's a worse actor than Joe Cox's sister.
It's just so creepy.
I mean, I don't think they could find a frame where he's not smirking, could they? Really?
Yeah. He makes them fine. He makes the mayor of Minneapolis look like Laurence Olivier.
So this thing, the virus, as I understood it, it doesn't get rid of COVID-19. It doesn't protect you. It just diminishes the symptoms. So you're still a carrier, supposedly, if you go out in the streets. So in a sense, it makes you, gives a false sense of security. Would that be right?
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah. So you can still go around spreading the virus if you've got it, but feel a lot better. So you're almost like these asymptomatic people that they're talking about that spread the virus that don't feel
you carry it on your hands and things, and you carry it on your body and carry it everywhere. It's like, I tell you what's really doing harm. The lockdown is doing real harm to people.
Yes.
There's people who are, I mean, it's one of the awful things I saw, was a horrible thing I saw, was, I mean, I don't know which country it was in. It's not Britain. It depends on the law of the land. But there's some old people in old people's homes who are now so down because they haven't had contact with their relatives for so long that they're actually, it's voluntary ending of life, they call it. But the doctor can actually help them can actually kill them in some countries now.
Really? Wow.
And there's nothing they could live a bit longer. I mean, they're old, but they're not ill, but they're mentally ill. Yeah. And there's people, I know a Cornish lady actually whose sister used to run a restaurant. It was voted the best restaurant in Cornwall. It's shut. I mean, I don't know if she may be able to reopen again sometime, but right now she might have to sell up. She may not be able to afford to keep going and have to sell it, and it'll be getting bought up by some big corporation. So this is really harming small employers, small businesses, the self-employed, really badly.
I just remember what I was going to say, actually. Kind of my mind went off a little bit. I remember what I was going to say. It was about these TikTok videos and these doctors and nurses with TikTok videos. So we've seen all the kind of like the bodies dropping in China, etc. And then we started seeing the videos to do with Italy and Spain and absolutely inundated hospitals and kind of like staff literally kind of like on their knees and some of them crying and just some of them can't cope with the influx of numbers. We were told the same thing is happening in the UK of hospitals becoming inundated. Would a doctor who's been dealing with death all day and patients dying on ventilators and kind of like having to deal with grieving families, would they suddenly go dancing around on TikTok, happy, joy?
Would they get time to rehearse these classy dances as well? Because they're all pretty synced up, you know. It's a bit like the dancing on ice, except it's dancing on TikTok or something, isn't it?
This is it. If they're synced, that means they've had some practice. So if they've got practice, where are they getting the time for practice if they're supposed to be exhausted on the floor? I don't know about you, but if I was dealing with 20 people on ventilators and dealing with 15 different families grieving, the last thing I'd want to do is start going, la, 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 la.
Well, I mean, I was actually on the inside of this thing for a long time, most of my life. But I mean, doctors do have quite a sick sense of humour, I must say. I mean, it may be something to do with the survival, but
thing is, Ben, I get that. I get the dark humour. I get the gallows humour. The police have it, and the army have it. I do get that. But would you be that happy? Would you be that happy? They all seem as though they're actually quite bored. They all seem like
they are. I can tell you I'm still in touch with people on the inside, and even though I'm out of it now, and they tell me that there's the COVID quarantine zone, and it's never been more than half full. Yeah. And they've spent billions on this. They set up these Nightingale hospitals. Or the major teaching hospital where I live in Oxford has basically been cleared for action, and it's actually a lot quieter than normal because they're actually not they're not actually admitting people like they used to. So a lot of clinic cases, a lot of GP referrals, they're just not happening, and they're just sending people home to be treated in the community where they would normally be. They would normally say, "Well, admit them." And so basically, the hospital generally is it's bracing itself for the storm, which means it's very, very quiet there indeed. But the storm has not come.
This is it.
The quarantine zone is it's almost empty. I mean, they do have a few patients, obviously, but they say never more than half full. This idea that hospitals are being inundated is a lie.
It is.
We should be getting ghosts of COVID, shouldn't we? You know, these people should be coming back saying, yes, I died of COVID, to confirm it. I heard an interesting story. Colin Wilson, the author, who has written quite a few paranormal books, he said that after the tsunami of 2004, where about 300,000 people around the Southeast Asia areas wiped out in the tsunami, different islands and regions around there, 300,000 people died, allegedly, approximately, I should say, correct myself. And he said pretty much after that, there was a plague of poltergeist activity around all those areas, of all those people. I'm not saying 300 spooks, but let's say, for instance, 10% of those 300,000, maybe 30,000 people who doesn't believe in the afterlife suddenly became trapped between this world and the next, and they're trying to do poltergeist stuff to kind of get people's attention. That's quite a lot of spooks, isn't it, really? I mean, moving your fridge magnets about or whatever it might be, like Andy said happened.
I have a possible theory about what might be gelling this all together. I'll run this by you guys and see what you think. What if the Illuminati, the deep state, the dark cabal are worshipping or being guided by dark demonic entities, whether they're dark aliens or dark demons or whatever? And what if the bargain is this? The dark entities say to the Illuminati, we will protect you and you will be absolutely fine, in the same way Hitler kind of like views his generals and Stalin views his generals. You'll be all okay so long as you enslave the entire race, and it's got to be done by this particular time, because maybe the dark guys know that the light guys are maybe coming in to kind of maybe help mankind, ascend mankind, work with mankind, and the last thing they want is that. So they want a dark kind of like closed down society. So this virus and all of the absolutely freedom sapping laws to do with all of this, and this great reset, you've probably heard about this great reset that they were talking about basically turning the whole globe into a communist state. Do you guys think that all of this lockdown, freedom-sapping bullshit is to enslave mankind in preparation for the actual physical return of these dark demonic beings?
I can answer that immediately. Yes.
Yeah.
Word. That's precisely what it is, and they are up against it. They are up against the stopwatch here. I think time's running out, and this is why they're pushing it so hard now, and they're taking risks. They're risking exposure. The whole coronavirus thing is a part of that. I always thought it'd be some big global war or even a fake alien invasion, but instead they've chosen something far less obtrusive and far less dramatic, but it has the same effect. It allows the government to take complete control of society in preparation for what they call, was it in that the Illuminatus trilogy, immanentizing the eschaton, they called it, basically where they go for their final takeover. Hopefully, obviously, we don't know what's going to happen, but look how many people can see it. Look how much resistance they're getting. Look how many good people there are fighting back. And I mean, even like the president of the United States, like he's on our side. He's one of us. I mean, he's a conspiracy theorist. I mean, they're calling him that.
I think they would have factored in so many people would have woken up, but do you think they would have known that so many are actually waking up, and prominent people as well? I mean, there's a lot of, as we know, a lot of people high on the medical, got qualifications as doctors so high up are speaking out. There's so much, and more are coming out, and it's you just think that this can't last for that. It can't last for that long. Surely there's something's got to give.
Things are changing actually, because up to a point people are confused by what's been going on. They've heard about this virus and they see all the problems and people dropping dead and all the rest of it. And they're thinking, well, where's all that coming from? And then they're getting all this other information. What's been going on? Now, I saw a very, very short but interesting interview yesterday with, Candace Owens in America.
She's brilliant.
Yeah, very, very impressive lady. Yeah. She's 9 months pregnant, but she hasn't given up. She is taking out a lawsuit against the fact checkers on Facebook. Because she posted on her Facebook, she posted an extract from an article in the UK Spectator magazine by a fully credentialed doctor who was making some comments about the virus and all the rest of it. And she got fact checked for that, and it was taken down. So she said, "No, I'm not standing for this." So she found out who the fact checker was, who did it. A chap in Canada who used to work for CNN, has now had a contract for working for Facebook. And basically he said, "I found a doctor who doesn't agree with your doctor." And that's what it comes down to. So
that's where we are, isn't it? That's where we are with it.
So she's crowdfunding because it's an expensive business to take a lawsuit in America at this level. She's crowdfunding it. She's virtually got all the finance she needs. And to be able to then take on the fact checkers, who aren't fact checkers at all, they're just people with a different opinion, and making Facebook come up and front up to what they're actually doing. Because behind all the Facebook and the Twitter and the Google stuff, there is one thing that they can't fight, and that's Section 230 of the 1997 Communications Act in America, which allowed platforms to be considered differently from publishers. Publishers are liable for the information that they put out. Platforms are supposed to be able to put anything they want out, assuming it's not libelous or not libelous, and it's not illegal. They're not supposed to monitor or censor it. They just put it out. They're a platform. They're not a publisher. Now, if they become publishers, all bets are off because they can't continue to do it. And Facebook and Twitter have become, basically, they're in the crosshairs of the US government, assuming that Trump can get it because he's fully aware of what's going on. And it may well be that Trump will prevail because he has over half the country behind him, supporting him, not being as vocal as some of the Biden's laptop matters. Sorry, Black Lives Matter. Biden's laptop matters as well. And we haven't heard very much about that recently, have we? Because it's been taken out.
It's got to the point where this actually happened the other day, and I saw an article on it as well. I was playing about with somebody with a bit of banter, and I was about to call them a silly dildo. it's just a stupid thing, right? I actually got a warning coming up saying what you're about to post might break community standards. And I was just thinking, so now they're cracking down on swear words. So it's not just wrong thinking opinions. It's naughty words or kind of like, sexually connotated words. At what point do we actually kind of have like a little Big Brother kind of Stasi kind of paper
definitely tip? The thought police there, isn't it?
Word, telling us what we can and can't do.
Definitely the thought police. Would you mind thinking into this bag, sir?
It's just mad. Rob's come in. Hey, hello, Rob.
Hi, Rob.
Hello, Rob.
Hi everyone, it's lovely to be here with you, and So nice to be asked to join in with the Christmas show of Unite Planet and the Paranormal Peep show.
How are you, Rob?
Well, I'm really well, thank you. I'm trying to look after my fitness and health, especially at this time of year. As some of you know, I had the COVID virus back in March, and
I remember that. Yes,
I recovered very well from that. And so these days, I'm looking after my health, my weight, taking vitamin supplements, especially vitamin D and zinc, because I've been banging on about
too,
that
Rob.
for ages.
Me too, Rob.
Good show.
Me too. And you're looking well, by the way, Rob. Looking fantastic.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm not doing too bad. I'm 69 next month.
Oh.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Birthday for next month?
Yes. Yeah. And, so everything's fine. I take a walk every morning, do a couple of miles. I'm quite lucky where I live here. I've got some lovely countryside just around me. And I love nature. Anyway, but I didn't do the walk this morning because the weather was absolutely foul, and it is foul today. So that's me. Yeah, I'm fine, keeping warm.
Oh, brilliant, Rob. So, have you got a favourite ghost story at all? Anything that's happened to you or someone you know?
Okay, well, I mean, I've had a couple of personal ghost experiences, if you like. One was of a neighbour who I saw opening the curtains of her house, who lives, just across from me, and that was 6 months ago. 6 months after she died. Yeah, that was very. That was quickly. I mean, I saw this lady in a pink dressing gown open the curtains, looking across at me. At the time, to be honest with you, I was sat in my conservatory and feeling a bit down, shall we say. We all go through difficult times sometimes in our lives. And at that particular moment, feeling a bit down. And I feel confident that she showed herself to me at that time to, to just give me a little bit of a lift, if you like. And anyway, I thought that I didn't know that it was this lady who I've known for, I don't know, 20 years at that time, at least. But, it's across a couple of gardens, so I couldn't be sure. And I thought it was maybe guests that my neighbour Roy had got, some relatives or something. So a couple of days later, I went and saw him. He was sat on his doorstep, and I thought I'd go and cheer him up because, as I say, his wife had died 6 months previously, and he was on his own. And I mentioned seeing this lady in this bright pink dressing gown opening the curtains of the right hand bedroom, And he said, "Well, my wife's favourite dressing gown was bright pink," and he said, "I felt that I'd seen her walking across the landing." Towards her bedroom, but I couldn't bring myself to believe it. And so when I told him this, it made him feel an awful lot better because, he understood that, yes, she'd passed, but she was still around, and, people who pass over, death's just a body thing. It's, it's got nothing to do with who we really are. So that was that one. And then quickly, about 6 months after my own wife died, she appeared full body weight in our bed. And she did this 3 times, one after the other. I was wide awake, I can assure you. And I felt the duvet cover go down on her side of the bed, and then the bed go down. And this was on the 3rd occasion. And I reached across and I touched her on her leg. And she was as warm and real as you are. And, we've been married for 40 years. So, you know your wife after 40 years, And then I took my hand off, and then I put my hand on her tummy. And yeah, it was Jen, no question about it. And then I thought it'd be nice to give her a hug. So I went to give her a hug, but as I did so, she dematerialized, and I got this fantastic light show in my head, which was like white fireworks blasting off in every direction. Like it's quite an incredible thing. I found out later that night was particularly important. I think it was the 28th of February 2014, and on that night there was a massive solar flare hit the Earth. And I know that for spirit to do any major things, they require energy. It has to come from somewhere, and I believe that the charged particles in the air from that massive solar flare were being utilized to manifest her in that full body form. I'm quite sure she couldn't do it on her own after only being passed for 6 months, unless she was even more special than I thought she was. But it was an incredible experience, and one I'll never forget. If you want me to tell you one more, I will. Okay.
Please do, yes.
All right. Okay. Well, this is more topical. This is more up to date, and it concerns a friend of mine who I can't name, but he is incredibly psychic, probably the most psychic person that I've ever met, and I've met a lot of very psychic people. And I would say probably May time of last year, he was woken up in bed by a spirit person, insisting that he go downstairs because he wanted to speak to him downstairs. But my friend didn't want to do it. For some reason, he felt a bit unnerved, and that's unusual for him because he sees spirit nearly every day. He sees ETs quite regularly, and he's quite used to them. So it was a bit unusual that he felt unnerved. However, this spirit or whatever insisted, and so he grudgingly got up out of bed, and as he's walking down the stairs, he notices that the living room door is slightly open, and there's a light coming from inside the living room. So he thought perhaps he might have left the blinds open, which shut the light out from the road outside, from the street lights. Anyway, so with some trepidation, he opened the door to the living room, and the blinds were closed, and the light was coming from 3 beings who were in the living room. 2 of them were sat down on the settee. 1 was standing in front of the fireplace, and the one standing was very, very tall. At least 7 feet, a human in appearance, with a very long beard, and with a staff, had a large staff, this person gestured to my friend to sit down in the other chair and listen, and they spoke for about 20 minutes, and he told him that things were going to get really pretty tough, and there's going to be a lot going on in the world that is going to be really difficult for people to cope with. The COVID virus was the main thing, but I think also they were alluding to what was taking place in America, because that affects everybody in the world. And anybody who doesn't understand that isn't paying attention. And they spoke for about 20 minutes. And the main message that he wanted to give was that it was going to get really tough, but that he was not to get too involved emotionally in what was going to take place, and also to tell his friends, closest friends, the same thing. And of course that included me, and I of course, found it very difficult not to get emotionally involved in what's taking place, as I'm sure you two the same, because simply because we care and we do understand what's going on in the world. But I later discovered from another friend of mine who spends quite a bit of time aboard spaceships that she knew who this person was. And I can tell you, and I don't think it makes any difference, I can tell you that his name is Barnabas. And he is a kind of, librarian kind of being, a person who is very highly respected out there, you know. And so, and they reappeared again a few months later, but only very briefly. It's really interesting that some of us have ET connections of one kind or another, and that in this particular case, Barnabas was trying to help my friend and us not to get too upset, because the main message was it's going to be okay in the end. Okay, so just wanted to share that with you.
Super duper.
That's really,
yeah.
I mean, it's topical and it's really nice as well. Like, it's a great message as well in there. I love that. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, positive. Yeah, it isn't. I say topical these days. Yeah, you definitely need knowledge. It's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's going to be okay. It's going to be tough, but we'll get through it, and it will be okay. It's a real battle of good against evil. You know that just as much as I do,
Yeah.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah,
absolutely. The lines are obvious, aren't they? Yeah.
What's your plans for the future, Rob?
Well, I guess a plan that I've got, I have a UFO website, Macclesfield UFO Society, which is not really a society, but that was just a name I gave it. And I haven't done anything with it for quite a few years, but I've got a yearning to put a new section in there, particularly concerning abductions, because as an abductee myself for all of my life, I feel that I know a fair bit about it, and I have many friends around the world who are in the same position. So I've learned a great deal from them too, from their experiences as well. So I thought it would be nice to make another section in there, offering a bit of help, a bit of counseling or just to anybody who is struggling with that, because I do know that it's not easy to be part of this family of abductees, and especially at this time when people have been knocked down, shall we say, by all the things that we've had to put up with in this last year. So it all adds to the problems, if you like. And I thought, if I can do something about that, I'd like to do that. And I'd love to meet more people who are genuine, star seeds, if you like, which is what I am. I'm lucky because I know quite a lot of them, and they're personal friends of mine. But there are people out there who are dealing with this on their own, and it'd be nice if they didn't have to,
So, Rob, what is your favourite joke? Have you got a joke that you've remembered that you can tell us on this Christmas show?
I'm afraid I don't. I'm absolutely awful with jokes.
Don't worry, that's fine. It's just,
I always forget them as well. They never stay in my head either. They just jokes never stay in my head. I just forget them.
I've got a great sense of humour. I love to laugh, but there's only one or two jokes that I can remember, and they're not fit for retelling, I'm afraid. Not on the internet.
Well, it's great to see you, Rob, and thanks for popping by, and have a great Christmas.
Okay, thank you so much for inviting me on. Thank you to everybody, and I would like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year, and I'm sure next year is going to be great, so don't worry, it'll be fine.
Cheers.
You, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Bye, Rob.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. So, thank you, Rob. Who's going to have the vaccine then? Who's going to line up and...
Me.
Yeah? Yeah.
I'll have one of them that goes into your shirt. I've seen people do.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to have the real Santa Claus doing it.
The real Santa Claus doing it. Well,
The real
a
Santa Claus.
A special one. Yeah.
Well, according to an ad, the real Santa Claus, according to a Christmas ad, is lying in hospital really ill of COVID. It's like, you see that?
Yes. Yeah. That was an NHS advert or something about COVID or something.
Yeah, I miss the place less and less every day.
Yeah. So, I don't think there's going to be many people, from what I know personally, that are rushing forward to have a vaccine. But they're trying to recruit sort of personalities and celebrities and that to try and encourage us to have it. But,
I mean, the media says that there's about a quarter of the population, according to them, are not going to have it. I think it's probably more than that.
Yeah,
It depends on the polls, but I know it's about a quarter of the population of Canada, according to Trevor, who I do my Third Rail Radio with. But it's actually, this poll said 30% in Britain. And you know what? When the video went up, which was just put up by the mainstream media about the vaccine rollout, you should have on YouTube. You should have seen the thumbs down. It was over 98% thumbs down. I'm not kidding you.
This is what I'm saying, Ben. Like back at the beginning, remember when I said look at the comment section? Whenever a mainstream article comes out, look at the comment section, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook or whatever. There's a lot of people that are against the mainstream. A hell of a lot of people about vaccines, about COVID, about this great reset thing. You know, the BBC or whatever will put out something expecting everyone to lap it up, and some people do, but there's a hell of a lot that say no.
Yeah, that's definitely it.
In fact, all this emphasis on conspiracy theories, whether the anti-vax, it's just encouraging people to find out what the hell's going on.
It's not working. The lies don't work anymore. I mean, the fact checker, the very way they brought in these fact checkers, and the BBC have a disinformation team. It's like it's all, but like you were saying earlier on, it's not the fact checkers, and Candace Owens is making this point. It's not facts. It's like it's no more fact checking than the Ministry of Truth is about truth in 1984. It's the opposite. It's Orwellian language. I mean, the moment they say, because these doctors, these very brave doctors who are speaking out about this, and they've actually been told they can't speak about on medical, they're not to speak on medical matters, and they're doctors. They're basically saying this is not a medical matter at all. It's a political matter. Yeah, they're admitting it, and everyone can see it. It's only a matter of time before that awareness translates into action.
Yeah.
Whenever I hear the word fact check, I just imagine this kind of like neon-haired, pierced, tattooed, angry communist with a Che Guevara t-shirt on.
Yeah.
Just kind of screaming.
I actually saw some COVID marshals down the street the other day. Has anyone seen any of those?
Yeah. Not seen any of them yet, no.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, right? I think it was either last week or the week before. I think it was a week before. I went to the first live gig at a local pub, and they could put it on without food because legally they were kind of like a live event as opposed to kind of like a pub playing music. They had a live band. About 2 o'clock, not 2 o'clock in the morning, about 10 o'clock. There's a load of police that came in with kind of like COVID marshals with environmental health and safety type people. I think there's about 3 police officers, and I think it was like 2 of these COVID marshals, health and safety people. And they were actually telling some people to sit down and not sing and dance because some of them were kind of quite getting into it. And
enjoy yourself.
I was just kind of thinking, are there no burglaries around? Weren't we told that there's not enough resources to respond to things like burglaries anymore? What is more important, somebody singing and dancing or somebody's house getting broken?
Yeah.
Well, the answer is, the non-sarcastic answer to that is, the COVID thing's much more important because that's what the government want us to do. But I was
going to say, the police used to raid music venues because they're playing too loud. I mean...
selling drugs or something.
Now they're breathing too hard.
It's like who applies for these jobs as COVID marshals? Unfortunately, they're there. I've not actually been to the city centres. I haven't seen them, but I've seen videos of them walking around the city centres. And these are like the capos they used to have in the old Jewish ghettos in the Nazis Germany. They're the guys. They're people who just simply they say, look, you keep the other people in check, and you'll be fine, and we'll pay you a little bit extra to the others. And of course, in the end of the day, they get thrown under the bus with everyone else. When the wagons pull up to take them away to the camps, the capos go in there too. And the same, all these people are enforcing these ridiculous laws. These people who won't rebel, the police, the COVID-19 marshals, and the suited bureaucrats in offices, and they are in the same boat as us, and they're forging their own shackles. At least we're standing up to it. At least we're trying to resist. I mean, whether we'll succeed or not, I think we will. I'm optimistic, but at least we're trying. I mean, but these people, what are they going to do after all this is over? They're going to have to say, "Well, look, I'm sorry, but I was working for the other side."
So go back to being traffic wardens.
Well, they don't have to change the uniform, actually, because they're still wearing fluorescents. I mean, in fact, these COVID marshals that I saw, they were just chatting to each other, leaning against the street as if they're having a chat. And I actually saw about 20 yards away, these guys sitting outside of a pub, a group of 6 at a table, and they weren't related to each other. I don't think they didn't look like each other. There's no family-looking unit. They looked like a bunch of mates all sitting next to each other. And I thought, I really didn't know whether that was illegal or not in this present climate. I couldn't really give a toss, to be honest, about it. But there were the COVID marshals, not even sort of taking much notice of them to kind of be bothered about arresting them. So I think these particular ones were just taking their money and running. And also, these people were local to the town. I don't think really, in the truth of it, they really want to make themselves too kind of unpopular. So they might be just taking the money and just keeping a quiet, low profile and saying they're checking when they're perhaps not really doing much at all.
Well, it's the same situation with the test and trace fiasco. And there are people who are supposed to be going out tracing all those. I'm not sure how they work out who they're supposed to trace, but some people say they haven't received one phone call to go out and trace anybody, but they're still getting paid £9.20 an hour. And all that PPE we're told that we needed so desperately at the beginning, and we didn't have any because the government was so incompetent they couldn't order it. So they go and order hundreds of container loads of it from China, which is now sitting in the docks, blocking up the docks where people are trying to get food in.
Crikey.
There is so much incompetence.
It actually gets worse than that. I've heard about farmers who want to create food. They want to plough their fields and sow seeds, but they're being told not to do it. They're being almost kind of paid not to produce food. And do you remember at the beginning of the COVID thing, there was some dairy farmers and meat producers who were told to kill all their animals for some reason. Yeah. It's bizarre. I mean, what the hell? How is that going to help anything? What is that for? I suspect this is about starving the population, getting people desperate. All of this absolutely reeks of darkness. There's no light agenda here at all.
No. Well, and of course, we got Brexit coming up at the end of the month. That'll be fun.
That was another thing wasn't meant to happen.
It's going to happen because the EU are so desperate to get us to shut up and stop behaving in a independent way because they just want to punish us. Hopefully Bojo will stand up to it because he'll know that if he comes back with anything other than a complete deal, he's going to get ousted, same as Thatcher was. So he's basically got to get the deal that he signed up to.
If he doesn't, he'll go to the World Trade Organization, which I think is going to happen. I think it's the best outcome, really. But either way, I mean, there's a scorched earth policy going on.
Yes, there is.
Without a doubt. And the people running this, the bureaucrats, and the blockheads. I don't know if you remember Ian R. Crane's video where he talks about the blockheads and the bureaucrats and things like that. He analyzes this poster that he put up. They're incredibly bitter and incredibly angry. Lord Kinnock and people like that, who's the Welsh windbag. he's another one of them. These are
Lord Kinnock. Lord Kinnock. Do you remember when he used to be head of, what was that party? Labour Party. Do you remember that? What was it? Standing up for the socialist values of the working man. Lord Kinnock. Lord, monarchical title. I mean, are we living in a twilight zone? I know the answer to that already, but it's just mental.
I remember when he was crying because he couldn't become prime minister when he lost his second election in a row and he had to resign. And then he went on to become EU commissioner, which is like far more powerful position than prime minister. It's a complete unelected dictatorial position where he's answerable to no one. He can make his own legislation. No one, the EU Parliament have to approve it, but once it's there, once it's in, and it can't be repealed. It can only be amended completely unilaterally by himself. He's absolutely furious that that's all been taken away from him now. But that's a sign of 2016. That's the 2016 effect. The whole COVID-19 thing is designed to try and get that genie back in the bottle. It's they're going to try and push it harder and harder. But I think if they're going to keep it going after this supposed vaccine has been wheeled out, they're going to find it harder and harder to justify. They're going to have to think of something else to keep it going.
Yeah.
To hyper-regulate the economy, to, like I say, to maybe bring in food rationing. And eventually, like the Great Reset. What was it? So that boy from Brazil said, you watch the film Boys from Brazil, you'll get that joke. Klaus Schwab, he says, you will own nothing and you will be happy. It's almost like a threat, isn't it? You will own nothing and you'll be happy, or else you carbon footprint you.
There's another doorbell.
Oh, wow.
Who could that be?
It's
Guest of yours?
Sue Gaskell, isn't it? It's Sue.
Yeah. Hi, Sue.
Hello, Sue.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sue Gaskell Barlow, and it's absolutely great to be on the Christmas show.
So, how are you, Sue?
I am absolutely cooking on gas.
Okay, and why is that?
Where do I start? At 74, I'm in my 75th year. I've been back to university and gained a qualification in mental health. And that's recognised by all the way through New Zealand and maybe even further. And it's suicide prevention.
Superb.
Fantastic.
So things are going really well.
So well, because this year's been different. 2020 is a time we'll go down in history. We lived it. We're here to tell the tale. I don't talk about anything other than being optimistic, being in the moment, and accepting the reality, because it's here, it's happening. And so I found a time to reflect, to reevaluate my goals, my dreams, my hopes, and to find out who I was. And what I would say to everyone is journal, journal, journal.
Yeah. Okay. And do you want to go into a bit more about journal? Do you want to say a little bit more about that?
You know, the old idea of have a diary. Journaling is a simpler way of reflecting on life. So how we do this is we write the date, we write the time, we write how we feel, and we write how we think. And you write that down and you keep a journal. And that's a conversation with yourself, which is optimistic and positive instead of the negative mindset that we're literally talking. Like people say when they say sorry, forget that word exists. I've written a book about it. Do not ever use those words because you're beating yourself up. You're in blame, shame, guilt, control, power, punishment, fear. So we don't want to feed that language. We want to feed the language of love. And love is unconditional from within the self, deep, deep down in the soul.
Sue, your favourite ghost story? Have you got a favourite ghost story that you've either had yourself or other people that you know have had a ghost story? Any favourites you can think of?
Okay, ghosts do not exist, only in the mind of people who are fear-based and negative. That's exactly what I was explaining. So if you're going to talk about, do I have a spirit guide, somebody who's died that is there guiding me through life from a place of love? Absolutely, 100%. Do I have a story? If I'm feeling down or low, then I say to this beautiful voice inside, okay, can somebody come in and just share with me what I need to do. Am I on the right path? And it's always okay. If it's a ghost and it's fearful, it's like a demon. It's something that needs addressing. It needs clearing out. It needs, people do house clearances of energy which is stuck.
Yeah, that is true, isn't it? Yeah, they're like a block between the realms to get to the next place.
Yeah, and your chakras get stuck. Your chakras all the way through the body. Energy gets stuck because we're pure energy. Energy gets stuck, something that happened in the past. And sometimes you need to revisit the past. Here's a story. Revisit the past in order to let go of the trauma so you can enjoy the moment. Like Scrooge needed to let go of his past. Christmas story.
So, Sue, what's your plans for the future?
Okay. I would say to anybody, goals need to be small steps, especially if the mountain looks too high. Small steps, looking at the bigger picture, which means looking outside of your own self-centeredness, which is riddled with misery and unhappiness. So my goal is by March, I will have moved from where I live now, because I'm moving in with a gentleman that I've met, and I am one happy lady.
And just last question, Sue, but it's very appropriate for the show, is what are your plans for Christmas and the seasonal holidays?
Yep. My future, I have worked diligently to create a website. I've written books. I have work online. I work with people, face-to-face groups, whether it's online or groups. I set this up so that whatever happened, I would be able to do that work in the world. So there we have it. That's the plan I set 3 years ago. And now my future, next year, nobody knows what's going to happen today, never mind tomorrow. You know, you just have to take a risk and be excited, be optimistic, not a risk and think, oh, well, if it doesn't work. Because bottom line, everybody feels not good enough, or I don't want to be a nuisance as we get older. Or if you have a terminal illness, every human being, that's factual. Once you know what your story is that you're telling yourself, you can choose to change it. You've known me a long time. Do I look like I'm nearly coming on to 75? Do I look like I'm going to give up, fall down and die? Oh, no, not I. The song of I will survive. And I'm not only a survivor. If you're a survivor, you're stuck. You go below survivor. We must do a talk on this in the new year, because I'm not a survivor. I'm an authentic, real me. I am. And that's the goal. Keep finding out who you are. Peel back the layers and you'll be amazed what you find.
Right. Wow. Love it. Thanks, Sue. So, Sue, what's your favourite Christmas joke? A joke or Christmas joke?
I've got a cap on my head. Now I'm going to put the cap on my knee. What do I call it?
Kneecap.
Yes. It's silly and it's cool. I like that.
I like that. That's brilliant.
That's good.
Oh, thank you very much, Sue, for joining. Yeah, it's been brilliant having you on the show, and take care and have a great Christmas. Bye-bye, Sue. Thank you. See you later.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh.
Wow. Well, that's great. That's the last of our guests. So I think it's nearly time we wrapped up. Does anyone, obviously we've been getting other people to tell us their ghost stories. Has anyone got their own personal ghost story as it's Christmas they want to share? You saw a little ghost, didn't you, once, Ben, in your room? A little kid ghost?
Yes, this was a while ago, but I was, it was just sometime in the 1990s. I was lying in bed and suddenly I woke up and it was like... it was the early hours of the morning, and I looked over the edge of the bed, and there was a little boy kneeling on the floor of my bedroom. He was seemed to be wearing some kind of nightgown, and he was kneeling with his hands like that, as if he was saying his prayers. And I say he was a little boy, but he was just transparently not a boy, because he was made out of. He looked like he was made out of smoke that kept its shape. a translucent outline with a bit of detail on. And I wasn't scared. I just thought, wow. And as I looked at him, he lifted up into the air and he turned his head and our eyes kind of met. And he very slowly just faded away.
Wow.
Very weird.
Was this an old house, Ben? Any kind of like history of hauntings, or was it just completely...
it was where I was living at the time, and I was there for about 10 years, and to my knowledge, nothing like that happened.
You'd never heard any stories of anyone dying at a young age?
No,
or...
nothing.
Interesting that he looked at you. Do you think he kind of twigged that you were looking at him? Was there a kind of a dual recognition, or do you think he might have been staring through you at something? It's weird that you followed
I sense that our eyes met. It's possible in his world, I looked the same as he did. I looked translucent and ephemeral. I don't know. And he was looking at things in his world are solid, and he was looking at me, and I myself was not solid. I don't know, but he did seem to perceive me. He didn't show any alarm. He just looked at me and then slowly faded away. That was an extremely odd experience. I've never forgotten it. I can't prove it. I can't prove it's not some kind of hypnopompic thing in a way. Which does happen to me actually, where I'm having a dream and I wake up and the dream's sort of still carrying on a little bit. But I can't prove it wasn't that. But it was much more. It was much more vivid and much more detailed and substantial than any of my normal hypnopompic experiences.
It's a strange word, but I think I've had dreams like that where I wake up and the dream's still carrying on, and I carry on doing whatever the dream's in. I appear in court on Monday regarding that. So, any other ghost stories, guys, that you want to share?
Yeah, I've got what you might call a crop circle ghost story.
Oh, yeah.
About 25 years ago, I was driving back after attending a crop circle convention down in Bath, I think this one was, coming down the M25 between Leatherhead and Reigate, two junctions on the M25. Now, at that time, that distance, a long time ago, there were no street lights on that particular section of the M25. Going along, outside lane, company car, so I was doing about 80, and my wife, who was sitting beside me, said, "What's that?" She looked across me. I looked out the window, the driver's window, and it was what looked like a flying light bulb, about 3 inches in diameter, moving quite slowly. I was doing 80 miles an hour at this point. It was coming towards the car, and it moved across the windscreen in front of me. You could see it. And it went over the bank at the side of the road. We both saw it, so it wasn't some sort of reflection, because there were no other street lights. There were other cars around, but if you're driving a car, you don't get reflections inside the car from cars around you. So I turned to my wife and said, "What? Did you see that?" She said, "Yes." She said, "Did you see it?" I said, "Yes." I said, "I thought it looked like a flying light bulb. Not bright, not so bright that you couldn't look at it." Anyway, we carried on, thinking it's a bit strange. The next day, a crop circle appeared for the first and only time, half a mile from where I live.
Wow.
Which was quite real. Now, whether the two are connected or not, I don't know. I like to think they might have been, because the sort of flying light bulb description has been given to many things which have been seen in conjunction with crop circles. The famous Oliver's Castle film from 1996, where you see the flying light bulbs go, and then below them the crop circle appears. There have been several other films showing what looks like a ball of light, and they appear in photographs. They're the orbs that appear in photographs.
Wow.
So maybe there's a connection.
Yeah, thanks for that story, Marcus. It reminds me of a story that happened to me, again on a motorway, not flying light bulbs though. I didn't actually see this, and I wouldn't have known about it had it not been for my friend. We had actually just driven up to my girlfriend's house here in Weymouth, and we were driving along the M25, not my girlfriend, but another friend that was with me, and she was telling me about stuff. I can't remember, we were having a chit-chat as we were driving along. We're on the M25, and she looked across at me to say something, and then she went, "Oh my God." And I went, "What?" She goes, "I've just seen someone with their arms around you, hugging you." And apparently she said that she saw this figure of a man who appears to be sitting in the back seat, leaning forward to the driver's seat and putting his arm over the driver's seat and putting his arms around me, but he didn't have a head. That's the weird thing. But she could tell from the body shape it was a bloke. And it was almost of a luminous white sort of colour. It was hugging me. And as soon as she gasped and went, oh my God, then it went away. But I never felt a thing. I said, oh my God. So I was thinking for like weeks afterwards, I thought, oh Christ, is it some sort of sign that I'm going to die in a car accident and that's my spirit guide or something or whatever like that, you know, something really spooky like that. Yeah. Of course, nothing ever did. But very, very bizarre that she should see that as we're driving along. Because
where was it? Where's the location again?
I was actually in my car and we're just coming along one part of the M25. Probably about junction 20 or something like that, you know, as we've literally got on it from the M3 or something coming up from the south. So yeah, very, very bizarre.
That was,
yeah. Anyway, guys, I think we'd better draw this holiday Christmas show to an end. So thank you very, very much. Any final thoughts, gentlemen, before we shut the show down?
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Yes, Merry Christmas. I think that's the only way to end it.
And
brilliant.
2021 can only be better than the
Let's hope so. There's a difference between 2020 and 2021, and it's the number one.
Exactly.
That's all. Anyway, thank you very, very much indeed to Ben Emlyn-Jones, to Marcus Allen, to Johnny Sinclair, to Paul Northridge of the Unite Planet, Johny and Paul of the Unite Planet, Andrew Chaplin, and myself. Join us next time, and wishing you a happy Christmas, Merry New Year, and a safe, COVID-free, hopefully possible 2021. Happy Christmas. Bye-bye.
Happy Christmas. Bye-bye.